You said you might even be coming from Arizona. So regardless of which area, which direction you're coming from, feel free to come out, say hello, say what's up, all that great stuff. We'd love to say hi to you, see you. Hopefully all is well with you and your family, all that great stuff. But we're excited about y'all keeping us on the move. Our goal is to make it to Houston uh, and be there for a few days. Sometime this evening, starting this sometime this evening, make our way back up to Dallas. Was that 2-3 hours back up? Um, and meet with y'all on Sunday, and then start heading over. And as a maybe, this is once again a maybe. There's no, this is like a slight maybe, just a possibility. And I'm saying those who are in Alabama, I'm not even sure where in Alabama yet, but there's somebody we need to go check on. So if we're able to do so, we will try to put the word out to you guys some time in the near future going over to Alabama. Okay, but thank you for your patience. I swear, y'all, some of y'all saw as you were coming on. I was trying my best just to get on here. So it is what it is. But thank you guys who've been praying for us. We tried to put out as much word as we could, um, just to let you guys know that was trying to recover and recoup some from illness, and then like I said, just trying to get on this rising was a little bit of a chore, but we did in fact make it. So thank you guys for your prayers. We're appreciative of you guys being on with us. We thank y'all for the opportunity to speak to you guys one more again. And we would have, and even if it be with struggles and all this stuff going on and trials for us to be able to get on, we wouldn't have it any other way. That y'all be glorified. I'm on. Alrighty. So we're gonna talk about something today, and I'm not even sure, to be honest with you, exactly which direction we're gonna go. But I've been champing at the bit. I've been off, not necessarily because I wanted to, but just because I needed to. And so it's interesting when I have off a little bit here or there. It's interesting because usually it's not, or well, like I said, I've told y'all before, I don't really do vacation and stuff like that, right? So usually when I'm off, it's usually because something has come up. So it's not vacation situation. It's not because you know I'm I really want to be off, so to speak. It's because usually I have no choice and it's an emergency. So I end up just having off like I did these last couple of days. And so it's interesting because it wasn't in my plans, which a lot of stuff is never in your plans, in your hands, anyways, right? So it's always interesting from that point of view, but also it's interesting because I have a work, right? And so in my mind, I'm always ready to go to work, even if I have a day off. I'm always ready to go to work. I'm not even saying it's the best mentality to have, because sometimes you need to learn how to sit your little behind down, and I'm still learning, sometimes forcefully. So, where life or the Holy Spirit sometimes even just says you will sit down today, right? But and what I'm trying to say overall is that I'm learning how to sit, how to do these things or whatever. But at the same time, I also have this word, right? And so I've been dealing with this for 2 days, because normally every day I get to jettison, except for Wednesdays, I get to jettison, a word and give a word and give a word a couple of times, teach on and stuff like that. And a lot of stuff's been happening where I haven't been able to do that with regularity and surety, especially when in our in between travel days, right? So I've had this word kind of resting on me a little bit. We're in the midst of a series called, Who's Listening, and which we've been trying to make sure that we put inference and dedication and discussion a lot into when we're talking, when we're living, how we're living. Is something that people listen to, so to speak, and that people learn from and people glean from and everything. And so today, I wanted to focus a little bit on. I'm not even sure. I guess we're going to call this today the West and who's listening. I'm the West. I might even call it the West or not. I think the Holy Spirit would like us to even call it the West or not. Now, this is a weird title to some, but prayerfully it'll make sense in a matter of moments. And I apologize once again, a little off, a little out of practice. Let me say hello, everybody, and let's get started. Praise y'all. Thank you, everybody, for coming over from Thursday Rising Prayer as well. We appreciate you. Thank you, Minister Anais, for all that you do, leading us in that. So, how's everybody doing? Hello, how you doing, Minister Anais? How you doing, Christine? How you doing, Charles? How you doing, Sister Joy? How you doing, Mr. 252? Sister Tori, Brother Charles, Brother Jermaine. Everybody who's on, please forgive me if I miss your name. Give me a second. Let's see. Minister Tamara, Second Nature, Sister Deja, Money Green. Hey, off the sauce. Hello, Keith, Brother Keith. I apologize, Brother Keith. I literally just saw your text message, so I do apologize. We don't have a link for the early rising prayer. We have a number and we have an access code because we do a via conference call for Thursday rising prayer. So we will get the information to you ASAP. How you doing, Sister Sherry? How you doing, MIT Jelani? How you doing, KC? Uh-oh. You said the signal is buffering? Is the signal buffering on TikTok? Is the signal buffering on TikTok? Can you hear me on TikTok? Can you see me on YouTube? Hopefully you can hear me on the podcast. We'll find out later. It's buffering? Okay, hold on 1 second. See what I'm saying? I'm trying here. The signal that's not supposed to work that well is one that seems to be working better. All right, YouTube is all right. Yeah, YouTube is on the one that supposedly is a bad signal. I got the better signal, right? Oh, yeah, I can see. Wow. Yeah, the one that I'm paying all this money for isn't doing what it's supposed to do. Is that better on TikTok? Is that better on TikTok? It might not be great, but it's better. Better? Okay. All right. This is about all I'm going to be able to give you today. So prayerfully, as a matter of fact, as long as you give us what it is that you need to give us. All right, covered at bar. All righty. So I'm gonna just go ahead and roll, and I'm gonna just trust the Holy Spirit, and I'm gonna trust Yah, and I'm gonna trust Yahashua. All right, here we go. So today we're talking about the West or not. The West or not. Now we've been talking about this series. Who's listening? We've been talking about in this series, who's listening, right? And we're gonna talk about the West or not. The West or not. Oh, my bad, y'all. Just got this new thermos. I don't know how to drink out of it. Wow, I still don't know how to drink out of it. I guess I'm gonna have to just go old school. I bought this fancy thermos. I don't even know how to use it. I'm gonna just have to go old school with it, I guess, and use it the way we would. It's supposed to be something that truckers use, or some truckers use. I guess it's some type of this top or whatever, and I have no clue. I guess it's something you pour stuff in with, not drink out of. I don't know. Shout out to the truckers today, by the way. The last couple of weeks I've been living like a trucker. Well, not quite, but traveling like one. It's interesting. Every evening I've realized I've been on the road, surrounded by truckers. Nobody on the road. There's been no other cars in the middle of the night except myself and truckers. And they're dealing with 18-wheelers. So praise y'all for you guys and what you do and the service you provide. Appreciate it. It's a pour thermos. Yeah, like I said, I don't even know the difference. I just got it. To be honest with you, I got it because I wanted the extra one. I have another one that's copper. I like this one, and I liked it to be honest because it's shaped like a bullet, which sounds weird, especially off of what we're going to talk about today. But it is what it is. But I'm grateful and thankful for everybody being on anyway. It shows my ignorance. I don't know everything. But anyways, so today I want to talk about the West, right? We want to talk about the West, right? We want to talk about the West. We want to talk about the West or not. Now, why do I say the West or not? See, it's interesting because when we talk to people are all in until they have to be held accountable. So this one, somebody asked me, I don't know. This one is not copper. I'm pretty sure this is not copper. It's just metal. At first, I thought it was hard plastic, and I didn't buy it. But this particular version of it is, in fact, metal. I do have the copper thermos that I normally use, but that's inside the car. Where is that? Right, but see, are you the West or not? Now, this is what I mean. If you listen to a Ben Shapiro, if you listen to a, why am I forgetting? Julius Peterson, is that his name? Julius Peterson, I believe. If you listen to even, but people on different sides of the aisle. If you listen to, who's the governor of Florida? I want to say Donald Trump, but some of y'all are so, that's low hanging fruit, right? How you doing, MIT Jenny? How you doing, Sister Carla? How you doing, Sister Keita? And if I miss your name, by the way, today charged to my head, not to my heart. I'm actually having a little bit of issue, getting better, but still having a little bit of issue. What's up, DeSantis? How you doing? Yeah, is it King's on? Sister Iska came on, amen. Sister Andrea, Sunshine, praise y'all. But Island Boy, right? So, but and so whether it's DeSantis or even if you go to the other aisle and I don't know, pick somebody at random, even if you wanted to look at a Bernie Sanders or somebody, you could look at somebody who was like Pastor Paula down there in Florida, or even Pastor Joel Osteen in Texas, near where I am now, or at least within some hours where I am now. Or you could even look at a TD Jakes near where I am now, or a what is his name? What's the guy I'm looking for? Or even somebody who done lost his mind a little bit, Pastor Jamal Bryant. You could look at all these people, and guess what? They would tell you that the West, believe it or not, that the West is the answer to all your hopes, your dreams, your prayers, etc. It is the West who did this and did that. It is the West that gave you the medicine that you have. It is the West that ended slavery. It is the West that gave these vaccines, right? That to help you, bless you. How you doing, Prince? How you doing, Isha? Right? It is the West who's done all these great things. And then the problem that I have though is that, okay, well, is it the West or not? Because you'll say it's the West, and that everybody, including us who are still treated like chattel, should be excited about everything that the West has done, right? Everybody should be excited about what it is that the West has done. But then when we say, okay, well then why are you children of the West? Until I mentioned Hitler, then it's, oh well, that, you know, that mofo, he did stuff on his own. Or until I mentioned who started chattel slavery, not who ended it, even though you didn't end it yourself, but who started it. Oh well, that, you know, if it's either all or nothing. If it's all or nothing, why is it all or nothing for the things that you like, or the things that you say make you look great? How you doing, DB? How you doing, Brother Anthony? But then when I say it's all, but then when I declare that there might be something negative, you say it's nothing, not all, right? It's all or nothing when you want to say that you did the light bulb. But then when I say, well, Thomas Edison was taking people's patents and he mistreated Mr. Latimer, you know, the man who actually came up with the stuff and helped to make sure the filament was there, that we would be able to enjoy this thing. At least, you know, we don't use even the same type of light bulb anymore, but nevertheless, we would have even gone down this road towards the light bulb unless it was for Latimer. And Latimer is even part of the reason why you have a modern version of it, if you want to get into it. But then people say, oh, no. See, you can't judge us all the same, but you want us all to be American. You don't even want people to be, and I don't care for this term either, because it's a term that you guys made to put us down. Thank you for the love, appreciate it. But you want us all to be African American. You want us to be Black American. You want us to be a human being. Stop worrying about what culture you come from. Stop worrying about your branch that you come off the tree of, or stop even worrying about, how you doing, Sister Judith? Stop worrying about your what is it that I'm looking for? Stop worrying about your, not just your branch, but even your, you know, they say tribe. Tribe is even a demeaning term. I try not to use it because it actually is a term used to demean people, right? But stop trying to be, don't worry about your heritage, all this stuff or whatever. Just worry about what we tell you are, right? And always put some respect on the West name. You know what I'm saying? Always put some respect on the West name. Don't always make sure everybody comprehends that the West is the reason for the season. It is the West that did surgery. Well, hold on, we were doing surgery 4,000 years, supposedly, before Christ, 3,000 to 4,000 years. So that's 5,000 years ago. We already were doing brain surgery. We realized it was the West that made sure that you could be healthy. Well, before the West was involved, people were living 100, 200 to 900 years. Now, obviously, we know that y'all had something to do with that as well, but before the West, we seem to be doing fine. They keep talking about these dark ages and how we came out of the dark ages. It's like, actually, we never were in the dark ages until you put a lot of our people there. And you don't want to take credit for having people come into this vortex that you created while taking the things that they were enlightened in and bringing them down. So which one is it? Is it that you started everything, or is it that you that you started everything, or that you only started the things that you want to be able to say are positive? See, the West always says everything that's positive must belong to them. And then when you come along and say, well, hold on, this might belong to us, they say, oh no, now you got to, we're mad. We got an issue. We got a problem. Oh, if you want to, Sister Carla, for sure, appreciate it. And thank you for thinking about us. Yeah, right. See, the dark ages for how did you come out the dark ages? You came out the dark ages when you started focusing in on what those of us who were dark did. Right? And those who were dark did. Even when you started manipulating this, you manipulated it based off of what? Of what those of us who were dark wrote. Oh, I know you don't want to go there, but that's real. See, for you to come out of the dark ages, you had to come into the ages of enlightenment of those that were dark. See, we might be dark on the outside and even dark on the inside as far as melanin content, but guess what? We had the light that shines within us, and you have a problem with admitting. See, West, to be honest, whenever you hear West, you might as well put, and I'm not trying to use this for racism today or reverse racism or this and that, and I'm the first person. If you look at anything, we have this stuff recorded going back for years at this point, right? So many years, I have decades in this, 2 decades plus, giving the word, being a historian, being jelly, being Cleout, et cetera, right? And I'm here to tell you that in all this stuff that I'm here to tell you, that I'm the first person to tell you that I don't believe that somebody's evil just because they're white. I'm gonna make that very clear. Thank you for the love, appreciate it. I'll make it very clear. If you came on here, if you think that because I'm speaking like this, because I'm dressed like this, because I wear our hair, I wear our heritage on my sleeve, I have no problem talking about it, and I have no problem being very, hopefully not coming off as braggadocious, but very forceful with the words that I speak, and very purposeful, knowing that we need to speak this way to make sure that we have some pride about ourselves. But I'm here to tell you, I'm not here to say that just because somebody's white, they're evil. But I also want you to know that there's a code. Whenever you hear this word West, you need to know that it means white. Western theology, white theology. The Western biblical context is the white concept of Jesus, not Yehoshua, but of Jesus. Right? There's a difference between Yehoshua and Jesus. Right? There's a difference between God and Elohim. Right? There's a difference between what Europe used to mean, even though it was still Roman, but it used to mean something different based off of African mindset than it does today, to where European just means white. Matter of fact, the people who have taken the name American seem to have this weird thought in mind. And I'm sorry, what'd you say? How you doing, Karis? Oh, thank you, appreciate you. Right. So I'm just trying to tell you, and how you doing, Sister Beverly? We're in a very precarious situation. If we're not careful, we're going to fall for the okie dokie yet again. We're going to fall for this thing that says that Yah is something that he's not. And we're going to believe him yet again. See, you grew up believing that the West meant something. But once again, like, what does it really mean to be in the West? Like, what's the reality of that? What does it really mean when they push this narrative on you and they call it the West? Right? What does it really mean? And why is it that you only take some of your stuff? See, who's listening? When I'm speaking to somebody, how you doing, Sister Sabria? When I'm speaking to somebody, I have to recognize and realize with the quickness that person may or may not realize that the West is involved in racism, period. Because you can't take this and say it belongs to the West when this tells you that it can't belong to anybody except a certain family and anybody grabbed in, because that family is supposed to be the family of Yah, period. And if somebody want to admit that, I won't go here. I won't say that if somebody won't admit it, they're racist. However, I will say this: there's a system called racism, and the system says that everybody who doesn't fit into what they wanted to fit into, right? Everybody who's not down for what they wanted to be down for, everybody who's not doing exactly what the West would say do, right? Including even the whitewashing of the word of Yah, and any changing to this book. It tells us, if you've never read this book before, let me just give you something, right? Or even if you read it, because sometimes people have read pieces, some people have only heard or read what they told you to turn to. Some people have read it but never read it with the proper culture. If anything in this book, Revelation says this, is added to this book, the plagues will be added unto thee. It says, if anything is taken away from this book, then your name will be taken out of the book of life. How you doing, praise God? How you doing, Sister Helen? You said we're all the children of God. No, we're not. Because number one, in this Bible, the people who wrote this, they don't worship God. They worship Elohim. God is a Germanic deity that means you can make it whatever you want. Number two, even if I were to use that, if you say that we're all the children of Yah, the children of the Most High, show me the verse that says that everybody who's created is a child of Yah. Now, I didn't say, once again, see, and somebody might not have been listening long enough. Maybe you only focused on certain words. So allow me to say the same thing again. I am not, nor have I ever been, and you can look to many of recordings that go back years now, decades now. You will never hear out of my mouth that somebody is evil just because they are white. You said book writing by people for people. So the word people means nation. So you're absolutely right that this book would be for a nation, right? You have to look at the qualifications for a nation. When you're talking about spiritually, physically, emotionally, whatever, culturally, right? Boundaries, all that. And anybody can be grafted in to this nation, right? But yes, it's written by a people, by a nation, for a people, a nation. That's why even when they started changing the names of it, when they started going into Greek, because in Hebrew it's Badashat. You said by nation, not by God, according to your standard. If that's your standard, right? But once again, if you're talking about God, and then by the way, we have a problem too, because see, if the nation wrote it and they're talking about God, then how do you go outside of what the nation's concept is to be able to focus on God and then quote what that nation said to focus on God? You see, you have a lot of cognitive dissonance in that. You're trying to make a way to be able to say whatever the Western theology has taught you, including to use God instead of Elohim, right? Like, for example, whenever you see in Scripture, Lord God in Scripture means Yahweh Elohim. And matter of fact, when you use your Western books or your Western backup or your Western data, things like Strong's Concordance and other things, if you use the data of the West, you will discover that the West admits to you that they lie. When they say Lord God, it's always Yahweh Elohim. If it's Lord in all caps, it's always Yahweh. If it's Lord with a capital L, it's always Adon. If it's Lord with Lord, lowercase, then it's always Adonai or Adonai, as some of you say. If it's Genesis, it should always be Barashat. If it's Joshua, then it should always be Yehashua, or what some of you call Yeshua, right? And if it's Jesus in all caps, it's a straw man, meaning that you have to find out what his real name means. What is his real name? His real name was actually closer to Joshua or Yehashua, or some of you say Yeshua, Yahushua, Yahushua, etc. So if you see that the people that you're talking about, that you're getting your concept from, keep lying to you, then why is it that they're lying to you? We can't call it out. You're so busy trying to call me out for telling you the truth, but why don't you go to the people who've been lying to you from the jump, who write out that they're lying to you? They have it written in the books. They tell you in the concordance that even though the word of Yah says in Matthew 5:18, the Messiah says you should not ever change this word, not only the most minuscule of measurements, but the way it is written. You're arguing with somebody who's arguing for that. You're arguing against me. Why? Because you've been taught by Western mindset that somebody that looks like me, sounds like me, and uses the words that I use is automatically somebody who you should not listen to and you should disregard. You should find that problematic. That your mindset is, I'm giving you that somebody who gives you the truth and shows up and is part of the family and is part of the kingdom, that your mindset says, I have to fight against him from the jump. Something should pop up in you. There should be somewhere in there that says that's problematic behavior. But you don't think it's problematic behavior. You don't think it's problematic behavior that just because I look how I'm giving you truth, and the fact is that you would come against me. I don't think that you realize how problematic that really is. Religion, a legion of people that repetitively do the same thing. That's what religion is, right? A group of people that repetitively do the same thing. So I repetitively do certain things that are part of my culture, that are part of the culture of the kingdom. That's something that might go past somebody who's not trying to live in the culture. How you doing, Mindfully Zen? How you doing, Craig? You see? Including somebody who's thinking that because I'm talking the way I'm talking, I must hate in order to speak like this. No, that's not my culture. My culture says I can call out something and still be righteous. Matter of fact, if I was righteous, I would call it out. If I was righteous, I would live it. If I was righteous, it would be my culture. It would be something I do every day. It would be my religion. Every day I get with a legion of people that repetitively do this and put in this work every day, all day. How you doing, Brother Dwayne? That I would live it to the best of my ability without taking breaks, because it's part of me. It's in me. It's in my heart. As my heart beats, if something's in my heart and my passion, that means that every heartbeat, I'm passionate about this. Just as every heartbeat, I'm dealing with stuff. I'm dealing with oxygen that's coming in. I'm dealing with oxygen that's going out. You said, can you hate the Edom like the Most High hates him? Sure. How does the Most High hate Edom? I think that's something that we should discuss. But I'm focused on the West today. See, because a lot of people want to hate Edom as far as we're going to make slaves out of them, this and that or whatever. Well, fine. But the Most High also, if somebody gets their heart together, does it not say that there are people? For example, are there Canaanites? Because if you want to talk Edom is this thing that people just want to call white people, and that doesn't necessarily equate. There are some white people that you can refer to as Edom. There's some you cannot. Just like there's some black folk you can refer to as Edom, and some you can. And even some of Edom is supposed to serve Yah or serve Yashda'al, but also too, Yashda'al's not even in place to make sure that they can be great as far as this indentured servitude stuff, because we're not supposed to get them as slaves. Remember, this word slave is written into your Bible. So a lot of people are ready to enslave people when you're looking at the slave Bible mentality. The reality is indentured servitude. It means that they are supposed to be contracted unto thee and serve. Right? And also too, King Solomon builds a temple. If any man faces the temple, including a foreigner, a stranger, and they follow the will of Yah, we ask that they be grafted. He's asking about Edom, not Adam. Edom. Now here's the interesting part about it. Edom and Adam actually sound exactly the same in original Hebrew. Believe it or not, you have to know the context of who's being talked about. So you might even have to, like in original Hebrew, you might even have to describe as like Adam Alav or something like that, the first Adam, because in Hebrew, in Paleo Hebrew, Edom and Adam sound exactly the same, right? Which is very interesting, because therefore Edom's name really would have been Adam. Right, which shows you that he was named after Adam, but he also falls as Adam does. He sins when he becomes uncovered and loses his birthright. He becomes naked and uncovered, and now the only covering he has is to ultimately have to serve Israel, to serve Jacob. A trickster had more sense, right, than Adam. Remind you what happened at the Garden of Eden. There's a lot of layers to that. But anyways, trying to stay on point. How you doing, Sister Knight? Right. We're talking about the West or not. Is the West responsible for this stuff or not? And if you're responsible, why is it only the things that make you look great is what you're responsible for? You said that the lost books are part of the book. Which lost books you're talking about? Sure. Everybody tries to say anything, because lost books have become everything now. Lost books have become, you got to read the scrolls of Kemet. You got to read you got to read Greek theology now, and those are lost scrolls somehow, because now somehow those have become the people that are actually talked about in Enoch and this and that. Even the book of Enoch is interesting, because just like the Bible is rewritten, and you got to get into culture to be able to comprehend what's coming on. Book of Enoch the same way, where a lot of people are trying to decipher that and actually saying this. So let's look at the Anunnaki, let's look at this, blah blah that, whatever, and let's say, yeah, that's actually this angel and this that, and by the way, Kal-El and blah 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 and all these things or whatever. And remember, when the name Kal-El didn't exist yet, The only reason we think about that is because of the modern Jew, not because of the Sephardic Jew. I'm just trying to help somebody, right? That pronunciation of their name isn't even something that exists yet. So, right, so I'm just saying we have all these different things, and if you don't know any better, Kal-El even is the name of Superman, right? So Superman, you're talking about somebody who's dealing with something different. You said you were in the Israelite camp for a few years, so just so you understand. Yeah, for sure. You know, and no shade to anybody. I don't know if you'd ever say that I was in a camp. I don't really have a camp per se. I do. You know, we partner with different people, different camps, and people are always trying to build their own stuff anyways. I think at the end of the day, it's supposed to be the camp of Yasha'al. So even though I might be over an organization called SOC, which stands for Servants of Christ or different things, it's still, you know, it's whatever you call yourself, IUIC. If you're somebody who used to be Yahweh Ben Yahweh, if you're, I can't keep up with the camp names, nor do I try to anymore. Just like I can't keep up with the church names, nor I try to anymore. Right? It's just too many. That's part of the problem that we have. But that's a Western mindset. A Western mindset. Who's in charge? Who's the bishop of? And then everybody who's under bishop so-and-so is under their control. Right? Versus in our system, if you call somebody a pastor or a kohelet, right, who's over Qadashan, right, then the assembler, the kohelet, is supposed to assemble the people of Qadashan. Not necessarily always have to be in charge. But once again, that's where we get the culture mixed up, right? And so I asked again today, is it West or not? See, for me, I think that it's important that we get away even from West or even Middle East. Like even when people talk about Middle East or East or West. And if you notice, in all this conversation, nobody ever talks about North. Nobody ever talks about South. Very interesting that nobody ever does that. You ever thought about that? Because ultimately, if you were to tell about the North and the South, there's something that's missing to the equation. Right? And I'll get into that in a second. But have you ever thought about that? That everybody talks about the West. People like to even give credit to the East because they like to talk about certain things. You know, they like certain things like Chinese medicine. They like the stoutness and sincerity while having the proper mindset that they find in, you know, or at least a elite mindset when it comes to certain things as far as the Japanese are concerned. They like to be able to talk about Buddha. Right, so they like the East. They try to mix and match that with Hinduism and yogaism. Right, how you doing, Sis Monica? They love to do all those things. They like the West because West means white. So anything that has been conquered is West. Even if it's not in the West, anything that's been conquered is West. So really, the conquered mindset of the East, those Eastern people who try to be just like white people. Matter of fact, this is not me. This is for educational purposes only. I did not make this up. There's a Chinese saying, right, that basically goes, and if you guys even used to listen to, I can't remember her name. I feel like it starts with an M. But there used to be a comedian, an Asian comedian that was kind of popular. I never thought she was that funny, but nevertheless, she did pretty well. I can't remember her name, but she was kind of had the stereotypical kind of large face and all that stuff, and really, really squinted eyes, and elongated eyes as well. I can't remember her name once again off the top of my head, but she used to be popular, I think, in the 90s and the early 2000s. Maybe she's still Margaret Cho. Yeah, Margaret Cho. And she used to have this joke that was based off of something that a lot of Asian people in general said, specifically Chinese people would say, which is they would call you a reverse banana. Or they would call you a banana, or if you were, or even on, if you watch the show American Dad, if you're familiar with that show, started getting popular, came out in the 2000s. Francine was raised by Asian parents or adopted by Asian parents, and so she was called a reverse banana. So as a reverse banana, she was white on the outside, but she was yellow on the inside. Margaret Cho was a banana. She said her parents would call her a banana, but she was yellow on the outside. She was Asian on the outside, but she acted white on the inside. Right. So the way that we talk about that, a lot of our people, and how you doing, Auntie Marion? Sorry if I didn't say so already. How you doing, double O, Dana Dane? I don't know if I said that right. How you doing, Tracy Williams? But the same way that we feel like there's people who are kind of like that in our diaspora, that's something that happens around the world. We don't pay attention to others outside the United States of America. Maybe some of us pay attention to parts of Africa. Maybe a smidge of us pay attention to stuff like Central America, Canadian history, South American history. You know, and I know Canada is not a continent, but just you hear what I'm saying, right? That I'm trying to give you direction, right? But we don't worry about it because the West kind of orchestrates even everything that we are aware of. And therefore, the West orchestrates everything that we know. What's the difference? If I'm aware of something, it means that I have the ability to know the whereabouts of it, right? I'm aware of it, so to speak. I know I'm messing with words a little bit, but just stay with me, right? I'm aware of it. I kind of see the whereabouts of it. However, right, if I know it, to know it means to be intimate with it. Knowledge is different than being aware. A lot of people are aware. A lot of people are aware of how letters work, but not everybody knows how letters are used to create spells or spell out words. How you doing, Sister Vivian? Difference, right? Huge difference in different things, right? Everybody might be aware that there's something called Hebrew. Maybe you're even aware there's something called a Hebrew alphabet or a Hebrew alphabet. However, few people know how to make sure that every Hebrew word has characters. You cannot spell out, or not even spell, we don't spell in Hebrew. You cannot write out a word without writing character. But in English, you cannot put a word together without creating spells. This is West, right? So West, East, they even love terms like Middle East. By the way, have you ever seen the middle of an East? I know somebody will hit me with, oh, well, you know, in America, they have the Southwest or the Mid-South or blah, blah, or nobody, right? Nobody be sitting up there talking about like you don't have these huge long discussions that talk about these people are only Middle East. You still consider them to be an American, don't you? Right? So the same people that will tell you, see what I'm saying? The West has this weird thing. It's like certain things they want to get rid of and certain things they want to keep. But you don't even comprehend that a lot of you talk about the Middle East. The Middle East is a Western concoction. It is a Western spell. How you doing, Emmanuel? It is a Western spell. It is something that somebody's put out there to try and get you and I to believe that something that doesn't exist should be given credence. And then when we call it out or we say, I don't want to live by that standard, then people all of a sudden say, we never said that. We didn't do it for that intent. But I know how these words are spelled, what the witchcraft of it was. When I know the spelling of it, when I know the etymology of it, you can't use that same thing against me anymore. When I was ignorant, right? That was one thing. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. I understood as a child. But when I became a man, when I became in my culture what they call a man, I put away childish things. And I can now do things in love. That's what in charity. I can actually go in agape, if you will. I can be self-sacrifice, and I can have the love, the actions of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit in my life. And so I've got to learn these things, that I've got to be obedient to them. Because obedience is better than sacrifice. Y'all want me to sacrifice here or there, but don't want me to be obedient in my culture. You want me to sacrifice maybe kind of sort of on a Sunday, but you don't want me to live this thing out every day. Some of y'all want me to sacrifice on the Shabbat, but you don't want me to live this correctly every day. Some of you want me to sacrifice as far as making sure I wear what you tell me to wear, but you don't want to be held accountable when somebody says, well, why are you speaking curses over people's lives? The same man that wants me to make sure that I honor Yah wants me to curse out anybody, including my wife, who doesn't step up and do what they're supposed to do. That's wrong. It's either wrong all the time or it's righteous all the time, right? Now I know there's gray area, but hear what I'm saying. Ultimately, it's supposed to be done the same way each time. Ultimately, what? Ultimately, it's supposed to be done the same way each time. If you notice, I'm very schedule driven. Very much so, right? When my schedule gets off, something is usually wrong. How you doing, babe? My wife is on the Honorable Maya. Please check her out as always on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N. Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Right? And I'm a creature of habit. Matter of fact, I'm not just a creature anymore, but now I'm a son of habit. I'm a child of habit. The Most High, my father, my spiritual father, how you doing, Sister Sherry? He is a king of habit, a creator of habit. You don't believe me? The sun rises and falls the same exact way, whether you see it in the clouds or not. It's going to rise and fall the same way. The moon shall rise and fall the same way. Amen. Yeah, thank you, Sister Monica. Appreciate it, right? You said you need to see her. You need to see what my wife sounds like and who you need. I don't know. If you're very interested in finding out what my wife sounds like in order to either listen or function, I don't know what the case is, what you're saying exactly, but you can look on YouTube. She's there, right? She's not on every single time because it's not her desire to be. It's not her calling to be. It's not what her personality is. But she comes on from time to time. When she does, you can find her, or you can take classes that she teaches, or you can reach out to her as far as her business is concerned. She's a herbalist, so you can actually, reach out and bless her as she blesses you. Amen. But and by the way, our children. No, anyways, I don't know. If you need to, there's multiple places you can go to see who my wife is. That being said, I literally just advertise it. Right, I'll advertise it one more time. You can find my wife on TikTok, YouTube. TikTok is right there. On YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Come on. And so when we speak on these things, you got to be in a position, and I get it, right? Some people all right, at Thomas level, you got to see it first to believe it. We're blessed are those who can have faith and actually see and actually have the culture in their mind to where you will comprehend that which I'm saying, right? So if you got to go see it, you already been given the place to go see it, right? But that even if that's the case, once that's there, what we're talking about today is it the West or not? How you doing, Sister Austria? Is it the West or not? But what was I going back to? I'm sorry, we got off track. Thank you, Holy Spirit. So Middle East. The only reason there's a such thing as a Middle East. Does anybody know where that came from? Is anybody even aware why you say Middle East? Why somebody who's from the Middle East would even start to consider themselves to be Middle Eastern? Do you even know where that came from? Why is people who are in Egypt are trying to say that they don't belong to Africa, they belong in the Middle East? After World War I, even before that. Yeah, thank you, Sister Carla. How you doing, Sister Nadine? To trade Arabs? No. It's even before that. To separate Africa, it sure has, and they don't mind that happening. Matter of fact, that the same people who had already separated Africa. You got to recognize that Ghana, even though I'm Ghanaian, no problem, but I'm Shwi. Shwi came before Ghana, right? Part Ashanti, so Ashanti Shwi, right? Part Igbo, part a lot of different things, right? But Ghana, Nigeria, those places didn't exist yet. Those corporations, if you will, didn't exist yet. The only reason why you call something Middle East is very simple. England is supposed to be this world power at the time. Cultural developments, yep. England is supposed to be a world power at the time, right? England is what? Supposed to be a world power at the time. Excuse me. Right? I think we shouldn't argue. Anybody who would argue that is somebody who just is either ignorant or lying, right? There was a certain time when England, and some people would say still are, people forget that England still has a lot of colonies. We don't want to talk about that anymore, but Ireland is still under English, oppression. That's why there's a North Ireland and an Ireland. And we don't want to talk about it, but, the Welsh are still under English oppression. And the Scottish are still under English oppression. They're still fighting for freedom. There are some, sure, who work for the English elites to make sure that England still keeps their stuff. You have house Negroes, so to speak, there, but there's a lot of people, and I was just dealing with Europe, what y'all call European folk. There's a lot of people all over the world that are still colonized by England. And if they're not colonized in name anymore, they're still colonized in spirit or through contracts. There's a lot of English, there's a lot of African nations that are still under English rule and authority. Matter of fact, can we be honest? If you're in parts of the Caribbean, if you're Jamaican, right? In Jamaica, you can't just build a hospital. You know that, right? Like Jamaica needs hospitals and schools, but they can't build them because England has to give them permission. Thank you, Sister Nadine. Doing better. But yeah, they can't just build a hospital in Jamaica. People die. Don't matter. You can't just build a hospital in Jamaica. You can't just own land like that in Jamaica. It's like Washington D.C. A lot of people think that because you got property in D.C. that you own the land. In D.C. you don't own land. Nobody owns land. The land belongs to the corporation of the United States, not to the Commonwealth of Virginia, like it technically should, anyways, or the state of Maryland, or even you, the person who bought. No, you don't buy the land. You just buy the property. And some of y'all pay more for the property than you do for the land. Well, same thing is going on in Jamaica. In Jamaica, same type of thing. Jamaica, you got to ask permission. You can't just go ahead and just build something on the beach. Bahamas, you got to ask permission. You can't just go ahead and build something without England telling you can or cannot. They still have, I don't know what they would call it in England, so forgive me. I don't know if it's the Minister of Defense. I'm sorry, it's freezing. Is it freezing for anybody else? Babe, if you can hear me, if it's freezing, if you're coming in and I don't know if you can hear me, but I literally had to make sure that I was on the whatever this is, the hotel thing. And it's actually weaker than the Wi-Fi, it's weaker than the signal on the phone, but for whatever reason it works better. So it is what it is. No, okay. Yeah. So hold on. Well, hopefully she heard me. If she didn't hear, well, y'all give me a second. Hold on a second. Sorry, guys. I'm not that far from the room. I'm gonna just let her know how to get on and get the signal. All right, amen, amen. So, but yeah, so we're dealing with a lot of different things, and we're not really aware of how all these things work. I'm sorry, this is Tiana. I forgot that fast what I was talking about. I said, I know if you're talking about, I know you're talking about my wife, melodic voice, or if I was talking about something else. I apologize. I can't remember where I was. But anyways, so when you're talking about the East, right? The only reason why you even call something the East is because, or the Minister of Defense. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. They have to get permission from the Minister of Defense. I'm pretty sure it's the Minister of Defense. I hope I'm not saying the wrong thing. I don't think it's the Minister of Commerce. I think it's the Minister of Defense. But whoever it is, they have to get permission from that particular title. I'm pretty sure it's or the governor or something, or the minister. They don't really have a governor, but they gave the governor's power that the governor used to have, a governor of Jamaica, governor of Bahamas, etc. They've given it to this certain position, and this position gets to say whether or not these countries get to do what they do. But you would say these countries are free. You would say these countries are free. How you doing, Big Bro? Okay, it might be Governor General. I'm not sure. I'm being honest with you. I might be off on this, right? We're all right there. Thank you, Minister. Sorry, thank you, MIT Jenny. Right. So these are the things that we have to talk about and be honest about, be realistic about, right? And they can't make moves now. Going back to the East, so this is the power that these people have. Remember, there was a point to where England used to boast, or the British used to boast, right, that there was not a time that the sun would go down on her empire, right? How you doing, Keith Brown? Appreciate you. I'm calling you Keith Brown because we got multiple Keiths on. But thank you for being on. Right? They used to argue. They used to not argue. They used to declare that there was not a time that the sun went down upon their empire. In other words, there was not a time in the 24-hour cycle that what you call 24-hour cycle, as the sun goes around the earth, or as you guys like to say, the earth spins around, whatever. But there was not a time to where the sun was not over some part of their empire, which meant that they had some part over all parts of the earth. There was always something that the sun was on. Nobody could really boast that of time before. Time since, people can boast that, but you really couldn't boast that from time before, unless you go all the way back to the book of Enoch, when everybody was worshiping the Most High, or the book of Jasher, when everybody upon the earth was actually worshiping the Most High. We don't actually think about that part. We just disregard that. But nevertheless, in the West, they thought of England was doing big things because they were the first ones to make sure that the whole earth, right, even though there was a time, well, actually, no. As far as the known earth, let's say it like that, they said that they had everything, right? However, we have a problem, right? When people don't want to realize that power, once again, the West says, see, look at our power. But it's like, okay, so then you influence the whole earth, or the whole known earth, so to speak, the earth that you were aware of, correct? So think about this. They said they were the West. So where do I get Middle East from? Well, if I'm the West, it means I'm the center of everything. I've also taken over the West. So everything that is West is me. Anything that's East, therefore, you East, you out there. What about if you're in Japan, who you guys are starting to take over in mind and stuff? And what about China? You guys are starting to take over in mind and stuff. Well, they're just they're West. I mean, they're East, but they're far East, right? Well, what about those who are close to you? Well, they're just East. But then wait a minute, there's some people that's in the middle. If there are some people that are in the middle, well, what would we call them? Oh, well, they're Middle East. That's the mindset. That's how that works. So you think Middle East is a real deal, a real place, when the fact of the matter is the Middle East is just something that's in the middle of something where they used to have power at a certain place where they did, which by the way just simply goes with the Roman Empire, because they were simply repeating what the Roman Empire did. Remember, the Roman Empire used to have a big pot of, big huge pot, and then they split it in half. They used to have a huge place, and then they put boundaries in the midst of it. You called the Western Empire the Roman Empire. You called the Eastern Empire the what? You called the Eastern Empire the Ottoman Empire, or you called it Eastern Rome, or nowadays you would call it Roman Catholicism, which has given birth to, now further west has given birth to what? The further west you go, it gives birth to Protestantism. And on this side, you say that you're Orthodox, but you're both Christian. You both technically came out of Rome, Roman Catholicism. You just have different cultures. As far as the culture was the same, but then as they split, and as Rome started, even Western Rome kind of died off before Eastern Rome, right? Before the Roman Catholic Church stepped back up again. As Western Rome kind of died off, Eastern Rome kept going. So Eastern Rome kind of is more so, if you want to know, like Turkish stuff, things like that, Khazarian Jews, things of that nature, versus the Ashkenazi Jew, the ones that are on this side. Like you're dealing with culture, but we don't want to talk about it like that. But that's the reality, is that it's split up. It's split up amongst people who are dealing with different cultural views. So it's just a different cultural view. Excuse me, this should be the last time I walk away. It's just a different cultural view. That's it. And nobody wants to talk about that. How you doing, Brother TJ? But you're just dealing with a different branch of the tree, different cultural view with different splits. You're dealing with a different part of the beast. That's all you're dealing with. It's 7 heads, but they all same part of the beast. Here's the 7 heads for you, 7 heads of the beast. You have to look at Cush and Kemet. I know you look at Kemet only, but Kemet doesn't exist without Cush. So you got to look at, so this is all after the flood. All after the flood, you starting over, and you got a beast, right? You got a spirit, the devil, the serpent, that made its way over from before the flood, that makes its way over, right? Even out of his mouth, he spews the water. There's some people who are going to be on the other side of this water, who he says he's going to use to try and attack the clay. But the clay is going to stand up. And Yahweh is the potter, we are the clay. Genesis chapter 3 says there be enmity between the seed of the devil and Yahweh's seed, the children of Yah. Somebody was trying to say earlier, We're all children of the Most High. The Bible never declares that everybody's a child of the Most High. Period. Matter of fact, it doesn't declare that just because you're an Israelite, you automatically get to be a child. Because not all Israel is Israel. Right? So you have this weird thing going on where people don't recognize, but here's the 7 heads afterwards. You got to deal with Cush and Kemet, right? That's the first head. Second head you got to deal with is Assyria. Third head you got to deal with is Babylon. The fourth head you got to deal with is the Medo-Persian Empire. Y'all just go Persia only. You got to go Medo-Persian. The fifth empire you're dealing with is Greece. The sixth empire you're dealing with is Rome. The seventh empire is the Roman Catholic Church and Orthodox Christianity, right? You have to put both together because it's the same thing. This is why, once again, now what are you going to see come out of an Eastern perversion, by the way? Our brothers talked about this last Saturday. You have an Eastern perversion of the Quran. When we had our men's meeting last week, remember we talked about that this last Saturday, right? You had a perversion of the Quran. A lot of people don't even know how to read the Quran because you're supposed to read it in its entirety, including other books outside of the Quran. Just like there's lost books of the Bible, there's lost books of the Quran. Now, I'm not saying that we need to go ahead. Am I going to start preaching Quran to you? No, but I'm trying to tell you, right, that there's a lot of stuff that you don't know, right, that they don't even believe. And that you'll find that there are people who are Muslim that will say that Yahushua died for your sins too. Well, if he died for your sins, then is he just a prophet? See, like we get into this interesting part. It's supposed to be a correction. It's supposed to be a correction. And you got to keep the culture of the people who spoke it, including Muhammad, who himself doesn't even speak that much in the Quran. So you got to read other books of people who were even with him, including people like the big brother of Abu. I always forget his last name or his name. Forgive me. But people like the big brother of Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa's big brother was somebody who walked with Muhammad. You got to actually listen to people like him or Muhammad's wife, his ninth wife, to be honest with you, but his wife nonetheless, who actually says, this is what he said, this is what he meant. Instead of going into what other people have tried to make it for you, you have to actually know what they're talking about or at least be willing to go into the culture. A lot of Muslims don't even do that because they just go by, hey, our group of people who have conquered this land say that this is how you're supposed to worship, so this is how we're going to say you worship. That's not how it works, but that's the same thing they do in Christianity. The Roman Catholic Church, and they that all you're dealing with is two. So people say, how are they coming together? How are these Jews now meeting up with the Pope, who's at the head, the Western Empire, and these Muslims are coming? Well, the Muslims are coming out of something that's been influenced by the Eastern thing, but it's still West. Remember I told you, see, you're dealing with West and East only in direction, not realizing that West is a mentality. How you doing, Tony Mac? Oh, somebody missed that. See, if you're not careful, you'll think about this only in terms of the direction of West and East, not realizing that West is a mentality. The West took over, watch this, Ethiopia, right? Kush, Eritrea, technically was never taken over. Hear what I'm saying? They were technically never taken over. Technically what? They were never taken over by anybody. Nobody ever stepped foot in there. The Italians tried to come in there. Mussolini and them tried to come in there. They couldn't get in there, right? They never were taken over, right? Problem with that is though, nobody talks about the mind. How do you get rid of Haile Selassie in his bloodline? I even have family who knows some of the bloodline that has been hidden and still alive, right? I've never met them, so I'm going off a word of some of my family, but I know. We have some people who know exactly where they are, right? Who they are, and they're not supposed to say stuff or whatever, right? So even if somebody came for me, I couldn't help with that because I'm not one of the people aware, right? But supposedly, people in my bloodline are supposed to know, or people in my family are supposed to know, et cetera, right? That being said, though, even with all that, the reason they got rid of Haile Selassie was because of a mind shift. Right? They're doing some things that are not righteous there now because of a mind shift. They used Marxism. That's how they got rid of them. How you doing, Sister Felisa? Sister Yvette, excuse me, right? I think it was you. I think was it you that asked about Psalm 139? If so, we're going to do it tomorrow. Somebody asked about Psalm 139. If it was you, I think we're going to do it tomorrow. Right? It's going to come up sometime soon. If it's not tomorrow, it'll be on Sunday or so, probably. But yeah, I'm sorry. Said it. Look, it seems like after King Hannibal died, they flooded in the land, destroyed everything. Um, well, so Hannibal, you're dealing with more Carthage. You're dealing with Carthaginian. You're dealing with more North Africa than you are with that part of, I guess maybe Northeast Africa. I guess we would say, right? You're dealing with more him, and you're dealing with a different timeline. But a lot of people don't even recognize, even when they say, well, the West didn't get into Ethiopia. We even forget that like Ethiopian kings were fighting based off of Western theology and ideology way before us, right? So Marxism was something that was used by the CIA and other groups to make sure that they came into Ethiopia. That's why they offed their own king. Okay, thank you, babe. Yeah, that's why they offed their own king. That's why they offed their own king. They offed their own king. And I told you, Sister Yvette, I was going to get it, right? Country girl Yvette, I was going to finally get it together. It took me like 7 years, but I got it. But they off their own king because of Western mindset, because of Western ideology. They didn't off their own king just because. They off their own king because the ideology got in there. So you can still talk about Kush or that Nubia or that Kemet or that, well, not Kemet, but, Kush, Ethiopia, that somebody had, that they never been conquered, but they were conquered in the mind. Do they still do a lot of things differently than a lot of the world does? For sure. But they got a lot of infighting and things like that over there. You said, why is there an Ethiopian college in the Vatican? Because the Vatican has a lot of knowledge that they don't, they twist a lot of stuff, but they keep a lot of stuff intact. We've said this before, right? People be acting crazy on this, right? What's the difference between the truth and the lie? The difference is a lie has to make sense. The truth doesn't. If I were to tell somebody right now, Yahashua walked on water, a lot of y'all have no problem with that because you just say it's truth. If I ever said to you, Mashah or Mashas or Masas or Moses, or Musa, depending on how you want to pronounce it with different dialect. If I were to say he walked on water, right? A lot of y'all would say, yeah, he walked on water. Or not walked on water. He crossed the Sea of Reeds. Some of you still say the Red Sea, but he crossed the Sea of Reeds on dry land. A lot of you, no problem. Yeah, of course. If I were to say there was a flood that hit the entire earth. Now, some of you even would bring out some of the geological and scientific, therefore scientific evidence that exists to be able to prove such a thing. But nevertheless, even if you don't know that information, you would still say, well, yeah, there was a flood. And it was for, a lot of you think it was just 40 days and 40 nights, but it really the water started to rise for a couple of weeks and swell from underneath. Then it started to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. And then they still were on there for months, right? That was like a 6 month thing, right? A lot of people just go, oh, it was 40 days and 40. No. This was half a year. Like people's whole lives were put on hold, right? People had to start doubting would they ever walk on dry land ever again. This is about to be water world for real. That's what people were thinking. Wasn't no Kevin Costner theme thing. Or Kevin Costner movie. This was real life, right? But you believe it. See, but a lie, a lie has to be believable. I have to twist enough of truth. I have to always start in truth. I have to twist enough truth, right? But I got to start in truth. That's why we have a saying on here based upon Luke chapter 12, verses 51 through 54 or 51 through 53. We have a saying on here that goes like this. It says that truth separates. Really, you go back to Luke 12:49 and actually read Luke 12:49 through 53, right? Yahashua says in Luke 12:51, suppose ye that I came that there would be peace. He said, I didn't come that there would be peace. He said, I came that there would be division because truth separates. If you believe in the truth, then you're going to be divided from those that don't. And if you don't believe in the truth, you're going to be divided from those that do. The only way that everybody will be able to come together is that everybody believes in the lie that there is no such thing as truth or there is no such thing as falsehood. There's only, right? like if everybody lives their truth, if somebody says, live your best life, then that means that there's multiple best lives, or there's multiple ways to live. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to be cookie cutter, right? But to say live your best life, and that's become a way of us saying, that's become a microcosm of the world, really, but that's become a way of us just saying, hey, whatever you feel is best, you do. Whatever you feel best is you do. And whatever you feel best, you do. That's a Western mindset that I can take. See, how is it that in the West, I can play both sides? I can say, give me the credit for ending chattel slavery, but whenever somebody says, I give you the credit for starting it, you get to say, well, everybody owns slaves, but then everybody should get credit for ending slavery. I'm sorry, what'd you say, Sister Tiana? It seems like after King. Oh, I'm sorry. What about the Ethiopian Bible, the oldest Bible? People say the Ethiopian Bible is the oldest Bible. It's not necessarily so. There's scrolls that are out there that are we're talking about, that are biblical, that are older than the Ethiopian Bible, and even some of the Ethiopian Bible reads different. And a lot of people just go, oh, it's the Sefer, or the Kafat, or the Savad, or the scroll. They try to put that in the same league, and it's not necessarily so. There's many different Ethiopian Bibles, and some of them have been changed. So some of them don't read like others, not just because they're better or whatever. Some of them read different because we forget that there are Ethiopian kings that were already trying to off each other. Right, but we just go because it's Ethiopian. Once again, we have to be careful about that. That's on us. That's a very Western mentality, that because it's in the West, it's all great. So we just go like, hey, because we're trying to be Afrocentric, and I'm Afrocentric. Look, I'm Afrocentric. I have no problem being who I am. Right, I'm Afrocentric, if you will. Right, even those of us that are Israel, you got to admit that you got some Kemet in you. You got to admit that you have some Cush in you. You got to admit that you have some Canaan in you, or some Canaan in you. I know you don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. You got to admit that some of y'all are even married. As much as you hate Edom, what you try to say is just Esau. Esau is Edom. Well, okay, if you hate Esau, guess what? Some of you are married into Esau, and you carry Esau's blood with you because Esau is your twin. As much as you don't want to hear that, yeah, do as thou wilt. That Aleister Crowley stuff. Everybody says, oh, as is above, such below. Not all the time, but I'm just saying. But you got to realize that that's a very Western mentality, that, hey, we'll take credit for the things that we like, but then the things that we don't like, we'll all of a sudden disassociate. See, I realize that my father has an amazing work ethic, right? So I take credit for that, right? My father also had anger issues. So I got to take credit for that, or else I'll put the anger issues on my son. Hey, how you doing, Sister Shima? We're going to be passing, kind of, sort of passing. We're going to pass by where you at today. I don't think we're going to be passing through, but we're going to pass by. So pray for us prayerfully. We'll see you on Sunday. Praise y'all. Right? I'm just trying to, I'm trying to show, we got to be honest. We got to be honest. How you doing, Matthew? How you doing? Thanks for sharing the live, Miss Swan. How you doing? We got to be honest. Right, we carry some things that are great. This is why you got a new Deuteronomy 28, 1-14. See, some people reverse this thing, and some people have this thing to where they'll get you messed up. Some people will get you messed up if you're not careful. If you're not careful, some people are going to get you messed up, where you're going to be sitting up here and you're going to be talking about Deuteronomy 28 verses 15 through 68 over and over again. Deuteronomy 28 verse 15 through 68 over and over again. But you're never going to acknowledge that you got Deuteronomy 28 verses 1-14 in you first. You got to talk about both. We got to have a conversation about both. We got to have a conversation about both. Don't just talk about one. Right. You got to realize you got some positive and you got some negative. Don't be like the West. See, they can't they don't want to admit, are we West or not? Are we West or not? People so it's amazing. I'm in the state of Texas now, right? There are some people who are anti-Mexico in Texas. How are you anti-Mexico in Texas? And you got a whole theme park called Six Flags. If you don't know what Six Flags is in Texas. They have Six Flags. They raise in a lot of places. Why do they raise Six Flags in a lot of places? They raise Six Flags because you got to be honest about the fact that Texas has belonged to 6 different governments. Welcome to Texas. Thank you. Right. In Texas, you got to be honest. You got 6 flags because you have 6 different governments. If I got 6 governments, so 6 things that govern me, that means I have 6 things that have influenced me. So I got to talk about Mexico. You can't even talk about Texas without Tex-Mex. Come on, somebody. Right. And I'm not saying I'm a big proprietary of it, but Tex-Mex, sometimes it tastes all right. It tastes great. Right? But I know if I'm eating something, look, if I'm sitting up there and I'm doing some stuff that I shouldn't be doing as far as my health is concerned, but if I'm going to go ahead and have some Taco Bell, I know that's not real Mexican food. That part of Texas was Mexico. The whole thing was Mexico at one point. The whole thing pretty much was at one point. Not just that, but what? New Mexico, the places we just rode through, New Mexico, Arizona, California, more than that, right? But you got people that can't stand Mexico. It's like you can't even be Texas without comprehending that you was Mexico first. Mexico, Old Mexi. You really don't want to go there, Old Mexi. If you really want to talk about some stuff, let's talk about Old Mexi, because in Espanol, you don't even have a sound. But a lot of people, once again, they don't want to admit. See, that's why we say, are you the West or not? See, people in Texas don't want to admit that, hey, before we came over here, before we conquered you, before we did this, before we did that, right? Before we did those things, I want you to realize that before y'all came over here, that there was a place before it was called Texas. It existed. For some reason, civil temples is sounding familiar to me, but I'd have to look it up. For some reason, it's like I'm not catching the exact what the look is, the location, the geography, all that stuff. So I apologize for not being able to answer that question right now. But I'm just saying we have to have honest dialogue. Yeah, and by the way, even when you talk about Mexico, right? Guess what you're talking about? Do you know, if we were to use these terms, you know that there are more African Mexicans, Afro Mexicans, than there are African Americans? Did you know that? That they deal with the same thing down there, where there are a lot of people who are trying to be something that they're not, but a lot of people realize that they are you. A lot less of us realize that you have a group of people that are right at the border. Matter of fact, peep game. If you are Seminole, then Mexico is like your best friend. Anybody in here? I'm married into the Seminole Nation. I'm not Seminole by blood. My child is, and therefore, I guess if two become one, you can say I am as well. But my wife and her people, part of what they are, she's many different things. Their Foot, their Creek, etc. Right? I think Blackfoot as well. But also they are Seminole. I'm more Anakitabaya, a branch of Cherokee, right? And therefore cousins to Choctaw and stuff like that. So we kind of almost hit all of the 5 favorite nations, if not all 5 favorite nations. We got to hit them all. So when we go through places like Oklahoma and stuff like that, or when we go through parts of New Mexico and stuff, some of that stuff is really cool for us because we're going through our people's land, right? So my son, I always love to share that moment when we go through those places there, right? Okay, hey, what's up, cousin? I see you. So, but for us, when you're talking about Seminole, one of the first stories I started really getting into for our people was John Horse. If you don't know the story of John Horse is part of the Seminole story. It is not the only part of the Seminole story, right? You got to go know about the Seminole Wars and therefore the Gullah Wars. Put the two together. Those of you who know your stories, know our story and not his story only. If you know our story, make sure you don't just put the Seminole Wars together. You got to do the Seminole Wars by itself or the Gullah Wars. You got to put the Gullah Geechee Wars and you got to put the Seminole Wars together. All right. We were a people that fought for our own freedom together, just like Haiti got its own freedom. And then France started bowing down. And then Napoleon had to sell the Louisiana Purchase. The Louisiana Purchase doesn't exist until you fought for your own freedom. Stop letting these people tell you that, oh, it's pointless to fight for your freedom. Then nothing come of it. You have changed the landscape of nations. If it was not for you becoming free, Louisiana doesn't exist. How you doing, MIT Tracy? You hear what I'm saying? I just want to put that out there because you'll be so messed up. You don't realize that your people it's been your freedom that has shaped the known world, and your lack of freedom has shaped the known world. When you lack freedom, everybody suffers. When you are free, everybody gets free. That's why everybody should care about Toussaint Louverture or Jean-Jacques Dessalines or Dudley Bookman. The list goes on. Why don't you know about them? Everybody should know about them. The group of people who freed themselves. Everybody should know about Shaka and his cousins, and then his uncle, I believe, who was the one who fought against the British and won without even having the same amount of guns and stuff that they did. Beat the brakes off of them. Everybody should know about this and how it caused people to believe that they could fight against something that was that totalitarian. Like, these are things that are there. Everybody should know about the Gullah Geechee Wars and how they're still trying to take Gullah land to this day. I'm not as into. I'm trying my best. I might be too little, too late. I'm trying my best to get qualified to make sure that I can go ahead and be back into it, because we need more people of our own to be able to make sure that we're actually standing up for that land, because people are taking our land. Why don't they tell you that you can't even talk about Cherokees nowadays without talking about what the Trail of Tears, and that Cherokees and any of the 5 favorite nations and black folk had to be mixed in. So even if you don't believe that black folk were there, even though they told you that they believed that Negroes, the people who were alive with the power back then, the West, they told you that they considered Negroes to be anybody that had Negroid features. So if you were Native, you were Negro, and if you were African, you were Negro. But if you just do some research, you'll discover that Africans and Natives were already trading, living with each other, and having children with each other already. This was already done. If this was already being done, then it's not that far. We're not that far removed from just saying we're the same people. I don't care what any $5 Indian tells you. Got all these $5 Indians who are trying to tell you how to live your culture. If they have a right because they bought their way in, then you have a right because your blood says so. Melungeon proves that as well. Abraham Lincoln was a Melungeon. Come on, right? Abraham Lincoln was a Melungeon. You got to have European blood, what we call European blood, Native blood, African blood, period. So if you go back when Abraham Lincoln was running for president, they actually made fun of him because they knew that he was African and they knew he was Native. Go look at the pictures of him. You'll see sometimes he's depicted as a Native, sometimes he's depicted as an African. Sometimes he's depicted with really big lips. Sometimes it's people with big lips, black people who look like gorillas that are carrying them or whatever. They were trying to do all that, especially those who were Democrats back then. And by the way, Democrats and Republicans are just two sides of the same coin. But back then, Democrats who were the Southerners, now the Southerners are the Republicans, and you're seeing now it's going to flip, where they keep flipping it on you. You guys don't even keep realizing, they just keep shifting the paradigm. But the reality is that they're not shifting the paradigm. They're having you go through this mindset of they just flipping the pancake. See, when they flip the pancake, it's still the same pancake. Just because it's not cooked on the other side doesn't mean it's not the same pancake. Yeah, gave him a fro and big lips. They knew who he was, right? Dwight D. Eisenhower. Go look up his mama. His mama black. What's his name? They still got all the building named after him in D.C. for the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover, the Hoover building, right? J. Edgar Hoover. His mama black. He passed. He passed for white. His mama black. Matter of fact, he was homosexual. He was killing blacks and homosexuals. Why? Because he hated himself. That's why the penny's brown. And I don't know 100% for sure, but it makes so much sense when people say that to me, because no other coin is copper. But by the way, what is an American? See, you got to have the bloodline. A lot of people don't realize there's something called black Yamenta or whitening. If you've never heard of it, right? You guys people will think that we're just making this stuff up, or that we're trying to race bait or whatever they want to call it. But if you be honest about it, there's something called whitening or black Yamenta, even like in Brazil, they call it black Yamenta. But in other places, in Australia, they've done it. In Canada, they've done it. In the United States of America, they've done it. What is that? That's when you want to make sure that you don't just off everybody. You don't just take everybody's life. You don't just commit genocide only. But what you do is you make sure some of the people, especially if you can get them when they're babies, you train them up. Really, you get their parents, right? If you can. The best way is to get their parents and you SA them, you sexually assault them. And then you raise the baby out of that SA to be one of you. Sometimes you can't do it like that. So places like in Canada are really famous for going out and just ripping babies from their families and then raising them up, even though the babies want to go back. And some of them even escaped and went back, but a lot of them weren't able to. They were raised, they ended up having to marry into white people, whatever, white society. And then their babies, even if they were upset about it, their babies just kind of, after a while, you just fit in. And what happens is you have the bloodline. So even if somebody wants to argue, hey, you're not a real American, because a real American, by definition, is a copper colored person indigenous to the Americas. They said, well, yeah, at first we threw the T over the side, we put on blackface, and we did our dance and stuff for little fake dances that have no rhythm and stuff. And now we said we're the Americans. But now we actually do have blood. Because bloodline, see, people don't think kingdom. Right? People don't think kingdom. So you don't think that bloodlines are important. But the West knows. Oh, yes, they do. The West knows that your blood is extremely important. Why do you think they take your blood all the time? You think they only take it because they're trying to do research? They've been taking your blood all these years and you still got cancer? You ain't caught on yet? Uh-oh. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to hurt nobody's feelings. I'm just being honest. You think they've been doing all this stuff all these years, and you still got chicken pox out here? My wife and I were talking the other day. Somebody mentioned chicken pox or whatever on some skit they were doing. And I was like, oh, that's like chicken pox is still a thing out here? Because our child's not in school, so we don't really. And thank y'all for the love, appreciate it. My child's not in school, so we don't really know, because we know chicken pox is something that basically, like a lot of diseases, they push through the schools. They don't keep schools clean enough to make sure that your child remains healthy, right? Because that's not their goal. It's for your child's health to be intact. They're not concerned about that at all, right? But you put a child in school, they're going to get certain viruses and sicknesses that they would never get. They do that on purpose. Like that's one of the things that they push on your child. Like there's certain diseases your child would never have if they never went to school. But praise y'all for those of you who didn't experience chickenpox or your children didn't. By the way, eat healthy and you won't have to deal with a lot of stuff anyways, right? But I'm just trying to say, on top of that, obviously there's a goal in mind. As much as the West wants you to believe that it's all about being there, even the vaccines get you sick. And people get sick off the vaccines and then spread what the vaccine is for amongst each other. It's wild, right? And then tell you if your child doesn't get a vaccine, then your child is the problem. It's like, hold up, if everybody's child in here is vaccinated except mine, then how is my child going to be the one to spread something that you guys are taking the vaccine for? And then they hit you with something that's crazy. They hit you with something, well, the vaccine is not 100% able to stop sickness. Then, and I mean this with all sincerity, with every part of my chest is about to pop out when I say this. I mean this with all the breath of my body right now. If you're giving my child, if you're trying, because they haven't done it for my child, but if you're trying to give my child a vaccine out here, and it's not even going to 100% be effective, which means they can still get sick. And then come to find out when they get these vaccines, people who just catch it naturally, even if they do catch it, do better off than the people who take the vaccine. Right? I'm just saying in those situations, I'm not even somebody, you have every right to choose whatever you want to do. But I'm just trying to say, if that's what you decided to do, real talk. If that was the mindset, real talk. If that's what y'all was trying to do, and you're not even trying to make sure that my child is going to be taken care of, and then they can't be 100% taken care of when they try to get it, I'm here to tell you right now, keep the vaccine the hell away from my child, because that's all you're bringing is hell. Mess around with me if you want. Keep the vaccine and everything that comes with it the hell away from my child. Do you hear what I'm saying? Keep the vaccine and everything that comes with it the hell away from my child. Because you ain't bringing no healing if they still gonna catch it anyway. And it's better for them to catch it than it is for them to be vaccinated. Then just keep it the hell away. If it's not helping anything, then keep it the hell away. If it's not causing a better life, then why am I still dealing with it? It doesn't make sense, does it? When you think of it that way. But see, it's West or not. Is it really what the West says? Like, are we really going to do what they say? Are we really going to hold them accountable? Because a lot of this stuff just doesn't make sense. I be trying to make it make sense sometimes. It's hard. I learned from Dr. Lady Africa a long time ago that it's harder to remain stupid than it is just to live in truth. Shoot, breast milk is an effective vaccine for real, for real. They had mothers of babies. At first, they wouldn't let them take it, but then they started having mothers of babies give their children vaccine as they're developing, as the fetus. And I believe it to be a baby, but y'all call it a fetus, right? As this child is developing on the inside. And thank you, brother TJ. I appreciate you. I love you, bro. As a child's developing on the inside, they would they're putting that in there. Right? But the West doesn't take credit for that, does it? Is it West or not? Is it West or not? I mean, is we from the West or not? You know what I'm saying? See, this is when it gets. See, this part right here is when it gets really interesting to me. We talk about all this stuff, and they even try to act like presidents were doing different than they were, as if they weren't like killing people off and everything. It's very interesting to me that they want you to think about genocides, and they want you to think about Mao Mao, Idi Amin. Some of you might even think about Papa Doc, Baby Doc. We should put them on that list. They want you to think about even Genghis Khan. They don't put Alexander the Great in the list like that, but of course he should be in there. And Alexander the Great, by the way, is not a white man. So we should stop with that too. I'm sorry, you said it came back to lack of vaccinations, illegals, not getting also polio, other disease irradiated. And that's part of the conversation as well. But here's something that's interesting. Why don't they ever, when we talk about presidents or when we talk about Holocaust, why don't they never talk about people like Andrew Jackson? That's the question that I have. Like, why don't we ever talk and discuss Andrew Jackson? Or why don't we discuss what, the President of the United States of America, please forgive me. I'm about to say, well, I mean, hold on. That would have to be, wouldn't that have to be, hold on. Wouldn't it have to be FDR? Right? Was FDR the president or was it Eisenhower? I can't remember which one. Who was the president when they dropped the atomic bomb? Two of them. Who was the president then? It's got to be FDR, right? I heard somebody say Eisenhower the other day. It blew my mind because I was like, Eisenhower was a general in World War II. I was like, maybe I'm off. It's got to be. Is it Roosevelt or is it Eisenhower? Is it Eisenhower? Wow. I thought FDR made it through because he got voted in as president 4 times. He passed away during his time. Right when he got voted in the 4th time, that's when they found out he was cheating on his wife with the secretary or something like that. And that the one he was cheating on, his mistress, was the one he actually invited to the bedroom, his bedchamber. When he passed away, it was his mistress by his side, not even his wife. It was Eisenhower for sure. Wow. Okay. All right. In my mind, for some reason, I always make it somebody else. Okay. Because when did the atomic bombs drop? 40s, right? 44. Yeah, I got a weird thing going on timeline wise in my head right there. Forgive me. I don't know why that's there, where that comes from. But anyways, so I swore up until like yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, I swore that it was like FDR was the one who gave the order. Then somebody said Eisenhower, and I was like, Eisenhower. I was like, in my mind, I swore that was FDR. Anyways, but when you and how you doing? Is it? Please forgive me. Is it Aaron Bell? Aaron Bell? Aaron Bell? Please forgive me. How you doing? Thanks for being on. Thank you, Ricky, for the correction, and thank you, off the sauce. But when you look at it, right? So it's Eisenhower. Eisenhower, when the bomb falls, is interesting because nobody talks about him as being somebody who did what? Nobody talks about him as somebody who committed genocide. Now, somebody said, now, before somebody hits me with, well, they won't talk about this because, this is them dealing with war, right? They're dealing with war. So in war, there is no genocide. You're just trying to do what you need. No, no, no. In war, they attack women and children first. That's why you protect the women. Have you ever thought about that? If there's a fight, if there's a battle, what are you supposed to do? Get the women and children out. Why? Because you attack the women and children. And it's war crimes. I was actually, Craig, I swear to you, I'm so glad you said that. I swear to you, right? Or I'll just let my yay mean yay, my nay mean nay. I won't swear. Look, I was going to call this war crimes or not. That's what I was going to call this. Do you support war crimes or not? Because by supporting a lot of this stuff, we support war criminals. Real talk. I was going to call this war crimes or not. Because when you research this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with war crimes. Right? Even when people are making the bomb, exactly, industrial sites and everything, even when people are making the bombs and things like that, when you see bomb, like, we don't think about it because we're so separated from it, and a lot of us have not fought, right? As somebody who fought, I still didn't necessarily see this, but every so often, and I didn't really recognize it, right? As somebody who even was part of the United States military at one point, admittedly so. I didn't realize what was going on. When you see factories and stuff, when you guys see factories, yeah, to a certain extent, many of us are prisoners of war, right? When you see factories, and you'll see, whether it's in a movie, if you've seen it, or whether you've seen it in real life, and you see this thing where it's like you can see there's a target, and you see that square with the plus sign in the middle of it and all that to indicate that that's the target, and you all of a sudden like see it's getting closer and closer, and then boom, it's done, and you see a factory's gone. They're like, woo! Everybody starts celebrating. Yeah, they can't make weapons. Well, women and children usually make weapons. Maybe they don't start off at first, but when you start fighting the war long enough, it's all hands on deck. The whole country gets involved. That's why when something happens, what do? You get the women and children first, because they're also going to be the first people to be enslaved. They're also going to be the first person to be impregnated. That's real. The West does that. The West, till this day. See, you can't tell me about it because you try to act like I'm separate from it, but I have experiences with the West that y'all don't have, including times where I had to learn how to man up. And I wanted to be a punk, but you had to man up when you saw women who were in the military with you were getting SA'd. And they would look to you, hoping that you would be the brother that you said that you was. Now, I was little brother. I was teenage boy. I was the one that probably should have got his tail whooped by grown men. I had to make a decision, though. Is this my sis or not? Even if I get my tail whooped, it is what it is. Now, praise you, I was 6'5.5", and even though I was skinny as I don't know what back then, at least they thought my height was something. So a lot of times I could get away with squaring up on somebody, and in my mind I was thinking, I hope they don't swing. I ain't have the training. I had a hand-to-hand combat yet. I ain't have all that stuff, but I had something. At least I had a little bit of heart. Just a faith the size of a mustard seed, a little bit of heart sometimes will help you out. Right? Just a little bit of stuff. Right? Well, even with Israel, the judge, the Barak said, I'm not going to battle unless you go. Right? So we have no problem. But I'm just saying, when you're dealing with this stuff, realize they go for the women and children first. If you're going to destroy a nation, this is how you do it. You take the protection away, right? The women and the children are even involved in the process of protection, but who protects them? The men are supposed to protect. They're supposed to provide security and affection. That security and affection makes the wife respect her husband. The husband and the wife take care of each other. The husband gives direction, sure, but the wife lays down the law, which means the husband protects her law because her law protects his direction. It's supposed to be one and the same. But what you do is you take the man out. Why do you take the man out? You take the man out because to take the husband out. Why? Because you're supposed to emasculate him. And see, this is what the West does. Stop talking about the West and act like they didn't do this. The West comprehends that they take out the covering. They take out the security piece for the woman. And then what does it say? It says that our first thing to attack, read the Willie Lynch letter, is what? To attack the woman. And they do this for every single battle they've ever been in, including the ones against themselves. Can I bring up a movie? Because a lot of people like to listen to movies more than you like to listen to real, because the Bible says that you like to incline your ears to fables. Now, this is supposed to be based off of a true story, so maybe you'll even give it more credence than you give a lot of your movies. But here's a movie for you. You ready? You might not even like the name of the person who's over this, right, and who was the main character in it anymore. But the reality is that he gave something that was somewhat, at least, a better appearance for you guys to realize how valid and how wicked some of this stuff was, right? Braveheart. Scene in Braveheart. Mel Gibson's supposed to marry this woman. He's supposed to be with her. They're gonna be together forever. He's not even really trying to be the war person that y'all see him to be, playing William Wallace, right? All of a sudden, what happens in Braveheart? It's supposed to. There was a law, by the way, which is a law that they had, the West had, and all these things that they did. How you doing, Priscilla? Right? And it was a law. It was a law that England, once again, the same England I'm talking about that did the Far East and the East and the Middle East thing. Here's a law. We're in this law. The king, who knows that his men are out here, because see, it wasn't, even though war is held, and even though people can spend sometimes 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, a few years away from their family, believe it or not, still to this day, right, and be out there at war. But these were men who aren't with their families, aren't with their wives, and aren't able to get it, aren't able to have sex. So they make a law saying, hey, we know they need to be able to get out, get their stuff out. The Romans did this. Hey, you conquer somebody, you make slaves. Some of the slaves, they just prostitutes. Now, are there prostitutes that would just come through the camp? For sure. But some of them are just slaves. We don't enslave some women before we sell them. Hey, let the men get their aggression out on them. If the men don't go ahead and have sex, they're going to lose their mind. That's what they did. Right? And married men made concessions in their head where they wouldn't want anybody to do that to their wife, but in their head they were like, this woman is not my wife. This woman is just a prisoner of war. She's a slave. She's property. She's not a human being. That's what they did. This is Western mindset. You're not going to tell me this is not Western mindset, because you uplift Romans. You uplift the Greeks. You uplift Alexander the Great. You uplift Julius Caesar. You uplift Vespasian. You uplift, you don't even like to talk about Septimius Severus, right? You uplift Marcus Aurelius. You uplift, these are your guys. This is what they did. You uplift commanders in chief. You don't even know the commander in chief is not an American thing. That's something that came from England. And the commander in chief was whoever was the highest ranking individual in the army of whatever country they were in at the time. And the commander in chief had his pick of the litter of not just the women that he would SA that were slaves and that were prisoners of war. He also had his pick of the litter as far as, if you wanted to make rank, one of the best ways to do was to let your wife sleep with the I just said the title. I'm sorry, commander in chief, right? It was one of the best ways. So the commander in chief would be sleeping with his officers, the gentlemen's wives, with the gentlemen's ladies. This is West. So it's why is it surprising to you that JFK was with all these women, including a Cuban woman that y'all don't want to give her that, right? Called Marilyn Monroe, who passed for white. They thought she was beautiful, and the only thing, she was Cuban. Cubano. There's something called Afro-Cubano, right? If you want, by the way, to see how African Cuban stuff is, look up a if you don't know about this name, one of the best names in music, where a lot of people don't, we're so regimented, we're only focused on one thing. If you have it in you to listen to anything outside of just R&B and hip hop only, right? Many of you do. I'm saying, listen to somebody named Arturo Sandoval. Arturo Sandoval, right? Ta. I'm about to say this all wrong. Uro San da. I'm saying this wrong. L, something like that, right? Arturo Sandoval. I think I'm putting Hebrew character sounds to Spanish letters. But anyways, right? But listen to Arturo Sandoval and listen to the whole thing. Beautiful album, one of the best albums you'll ever listen to in your life. Right? Beautiful album. And listen to the Afro-Cuban. They're Spanish, of course, because you're dealing with being conquered. Right? But but there's stuff in there like Suavito, amazing song, right? Or I forget what song it's called. It starts off like Una discusión había entre gente bailadora, something like that, right? And it's talking about how in Cuban families they might be fighting, the husband and wife might be fighting, but they straight, right? They're straight. Yeah, thank you, Craig. That's it. Yep. But it's going to a culture. But listen to the songs. And I was like showing my wife last night. I was like, listen to West African influence all over it. Right? Listen to the native influence even by stuff. Right. But I was focusing mainly on the West African. So you would hear like that's called one one co. Matter of fact, they have a song where they go one one co, one co, one co, one co. Right? That's one co is a West African beat. The clave that you see those two wood sticks come out, right? It's talking about you can't do that without talking about where it comes from. If I change, by the way, if I change the rhythm, if I go from this and I change slightly to go, I just changed it to another part of Western civilization when they supposedly conquered somebody else. That's all I did. If I change it again a little bit, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Then I changed it down. I went to Brazil. Right? All I did was take it from one place, but it's still West African. Like I'm literally speaking different languages. People don't know that on the drum, like the talking drum, the shimbe, the conga, timbale, all these different things. These are just different languages, and they, in order to have conversation, in order to have a flowing sentence, you have to put them all together. Even if I'm doing something like a bass part, right? The bass drum, you'll hear. You just said. Actually, I'm bad. I can't do that with my mouth and my thing. I can't really do it with my mouth and my fingers. I've never done that before. So, right? You're just having a conversation, right? That's all you're doing, right? So you can even see who was colonized when and who got to keep their language the longest just by listening to the beat. I hear a song, right? And you just go, "Oh, that's Spanish." Maybe you have enough. Maybe you have enough knowledge in you to go, "Oh, okay, that's merengue, that's salsa, that's Afro-Cubano, that's samba," right? Maybe you even know where those things come from, right? Right? Maybe you even know where those things come from, right? But you said you got bars for that beat, right? But I'm just saying, when you do those things, right? And we were even talking about that, like the blues and jazz and New Orleans jazz or New Orleans, Rebirth Brass, if you know about them, stuff like that, or even Wynton Marsalis and families and stuff like that. Ellis Marsalis, who was the patriarch musically and things of that nature. Even if you want to go to the whitewash version, which by the way, he's very great at what he does. Harry Connick Jr. coming from his father, who was already over. I'm just saying all these things that are coming from. We don't think about it as being one culture, but if you listen, I was even trying to say, like even just hip hop that you'll hear it doesn't sound the same, especially nowadays because it's so bass driven and so heavy. But a lot of stuff that you hear, you like even and that's I guess that's more 90s hip hop, but even stuff that you hear, right? Or even jazz. I was showing my wife how like there was a song we were listening to, right, with the whole one coda, that beat, and the trombones came in. They went boom da do 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 da do do ba bo do 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 boom ba boom boom ba ba boom boom ba ba boom. Right, and it sounded like it was if you listen to it just on its own, it sounds like it's swung. Right, sounds like jazz. Right, sounds straight jazz. Right, sounds straight jazz. But it's really straight. It's almost, it's so straight it's swung. You're dealing with two different cultures. One gets there to back to the culture by keeping it swung. The other culture is actually going that same beat we were doing. Right, they're doing it straight. But somebody from another part of the diaspora hears it and goes, "Oh, you see, same diaspora, all right?" So somebody keeping on the 2 and 4. It's the same people though, right? But you don't realize it's the same. It's the same people. Oh, it's not your flesh, dude. That's your music, right? I don't think that every song that's secular is a bad song to listen to, but I'm just saying, right? That you hear that stuff, you don't even realize what's going on. Some people would say the crip walk. Yeah, I haven't studied that much, but I'll take your word for it for now. I'll just say it like that. But I'm just saying all of it's the same, right? Even if you listen to, I mean, this is what's something that's really old that everybody knows. I won't go back to Shaba and Maxi Priest. What about I could use, obviously. Well, I use a couple. I use something somewhat new. I mean, this ain't really new at all anymore. I guess I be telling my age sometimes, don't realize that. I don't really care. But Mr. Lover Lover. Mm, Mr. Lover. And it sounds like it's swung. It sounds like Mr. Lover. Mr. Lover. Right? They call me Mr. Boom Boston. That's what you think it is. It's swung. But really, right? That's what it is. Somebody's accenting one of the parts, so it sounds like it, right? Could you hear in that? Even though I'm stretching it a little bit, so I'm trying to get you to see a context, right? Could you hear a little bit of how somebody could put jazz on it? Mr. Lover, Lover. Right? Could you hear? Right? Could you hear? Could you hear like what's going on? Right? I was thinking about that too, Minister Bertram. Uh, um, that's where I was saying we can go even older, right? And we can go older than him, of course. But go back to Bob Marley, right? Very straight, right? But it has a flow to it. It's a culture. So you're even seeing in reggae, so to speak, seeing two parts of culture come out. So, doom, 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 boom, ding, ding, right? You could even see somebody in the beginning of it, boom, 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 doom, boom, doom. Boom, ding, 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 boom, ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 right? You'd be like, oh, okay. Like if you had never heard Bob's part on that before, you'd be like, that could even be country western. Like that could be slave in the Bahamas, slave in Jamaica, slave in Haiti. That could be somebody with a cowboy hat somewhere, right? You could hear even in your mind that could possibly be mariachi. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody who's just tuning up, getting ready to play. They're not really playing anything serious, but then all of a sudden you hear, "Old pirates, yes they ride by, it's all night to the merchant ship." Now Bob's coming in, he's swinging it on top of, right? It's going straight, but Bob swings on top of it. There's two parts of the culture completing themselves. All pirates, yes, they ride by. Now you got it. You hear it? Now it's straight, but it's so straight, it's swung. Right? That's your culture. I forget what the term is when you have even two beats. Sounds almost like when horses are riding. You have something that's going 1 and 2 and 1 and something on top of go 1 and the 2 and the 1 and at the same time. It'll sound like, right? That's you. You had the triplets and you had the eighth notes. You put them together, right? Your eighth notes, 1 and 2 and your triplet, 1 and a 2 and 1 and put them together. Right? It's that's your culture. And you can take that anywhere on any music. Classical music's got it. All these things that I'm saying, right? It's just somebody puts a different chord or puts a different rhythm to it, but you're dealing slightly different rhythms, slightly different variations. But you're dealing with the same music. Even if you talk about piano music, right? Even if I'm talking about piano music, if I'm or playing a piano rather, the instrument of piano, and therefore keyboards in general, right? The first pianos are African, not just the xylophone, the marimba, and other stuff like that. They used to actually put strings on some of those same marimbas, and they would pluck the strings rather than pluck. That's all the piano does is somebody presses a button, and the hammer comes down and hits the string. Well, somebody just used to play the string directly. We had pianos. And so this spreads out throughout the entire world. And they had stuff like that in native countries or people who are native to Australia, people that are native to the Philippines, people that are native to a lot of Polynesian places. Not a lot, I'll say some Polynesian places. People that are native to the Americas. The people had stuff like that already because they were spreading using the same culture. And don't forget that they were all together. Whether you believe the earth split after the flood or whether you believe in Pangea, it's pretty much talking about the same thing anyway. But people lived together. And then people used to trade and stuff together, including trade in music. So we forget about this. If somebody came from West Africa and was using the winds that they taught Christopher Columbus how to use, if somebody was using those winds like Mansa Musa and them and his brother Abu before, it was Abu Bakr. I always forget who it is that came before him. But when they would go over and these kings would leave, and if you had trade going over, somebody would be like, man, over here in Africa, we do this thing with the guitar like this. And they would say, oh man, that's cool. We got this like flute type thing and we do this, and they would jam and they would learn. And if somebody went back, they took it with them. You think it's an accident that everybody's using the same 1-1 code no matter what? Thank you, brother TJ. Yeah. You think it's an accident that I can listen to somebody's sound and be able to tell when and where they came from just off of the sound? That's not an accident. That's real. That's reality. That's the truth. Something had to happen to allow that to be something that we listen to and go by to this day. Right? And there's a culture behind it. You even hear the culture. But nobody wants to give you, watch this. But here it goes. What's the theme for today? West or not. Now watch this. Somebody in the West says, if we don't write that out, then it doesn't matter what you feel. Oh, I want somebody to catch that. I'm not feeling all the way back to myself. But that thing gave me a little bit of joy. That thing made me rejoice. It made me leap a couple times. Look, they will try to rewrite. They'll say if they can't write it out, then it doesn't matter how you feel. If they don't write it out, eighth notes, 2/4, common time, triplet, quarter notes. Quarter note is on the middle bar or above, upside down. It can also be on the middle bar or below. All right, right side up. Right? If they can't write it out, then they say it doesn't exist. This is what they do with your story. If they can't write it according to what makes sense to them, if they can't make sure that they got those steps down, right? And before they tell you to move this way and to move that way and do the Baltimore move and to come back and all this stuff like that and get, do all this stuff in between, they got to write the steps on the ground first. If we don't write the steps on the ground, if we can't write it, then it doesn't matter if they feel it. It's not great enough to teach. It's not worthy to be teach. I'm not saying all white people. Come on, stop playing with it. Stop pretending that we don't know what we're talking about here. Stop acting like this is a reverse racism. Have an honest conversation with me. How you doing, Sister Bremen? How you doing, Reginald? How you doing, Prosperous Abundance? Let's have an honest dialogue now. There's a lot of stuff that if they don't write it out, they say it ain't real, and that's not how this works. This is right, and that's why you have to start depending on your own. If anybody gonna write it out or talk about it, it's gonna be you. You got to have a different mindset about this. If anybody's gonna write it out or talk about this or whatever, it's got to be you, right? You have to be able to discuss your story. You got to be able to talk about your mindset. You have to be able to put these things together. Yeah, drums using warfare, drums using communication. That's why they're called the talking drums. Even in places like China, I'm not going to hold you. Look at other people as well to prove the same point. Look at even in China. Go to China, and they had this in Africa as well. But I'll go ahead and go to China just so it doesn't sound like I'm only talking about Africa as if we're not all the same people at some point. But nevertheless, right? Because you can't talk about being Bantu and stuff and not recognize China in Japanese language. Chinese and Japanese language and Bantu language go hand in hand at times. Same people. Nevertheless, though, right? Which is why it's always interesting to me that the people who are $5 Indians will try to tell you, or people who support $5 Indian behavior. By the way, this is a little side note for you. Put this in your back pocket when somebody tries to say this about you. Always keep this in your memory banks, because somebody will hit you with a, well, we're closer to Asian, this and that, or whatever. You can't talk about Chinese and Japanese people who you're really talking about. When they say Asian, that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about Mongolians. They're not talking about Vietnamese. They're not talking about Filipinos. They're talking about Chinese and Japanese, mainly Chinese. Well, you can't talk about Chinese and not talk about Bantu, which means you still got to talk about us anyways. But nevertheless, they used to put drums under the ground, right? Either they would have them above the ground or right under the ground. And they would have this big hole, and they would make this huge tunnel, and they would make sure that it was, as far as sound wise, it was able to capture sound in such a way that the drum would reverberate from out, and they would have language. They would have certain things. If they use this kind of pattern, the person needs to know, somebody's trying to attack us. So somebody might be a mile, 2 miles away from you, right? Somebody might be 10 miles away from you, and they've already started this drumming thing going. To where now, see, you only think about movies where they show you Lord of the Rings, and they show you the beacons, like the beacons, but we used to just put it on the ground. Somebody might be coming, and we already knew somebody was coming. We knew how many people were coming. We might even know who it was that was coming, and we knew how long we had before they were going to show up because of the drum. A lot of people don't know that same thing I was talking about with the clave, those two sticks that come together, right? Those sticks that come together, when somebody's dancing, there have been dancers that have hurt themselves. If somebody's playing and is not playing properly, because how you play is how the dancer dances. There's a spirit, soul, body connection to the dance. You might not even be aware of that. Like, we have to be careful. Seriously. Go down. Like, there have been whole fights that I've been part of trying to play some music. You sit down, whatever instrument you're getting on. Let's say I'm playing the bass and I'm getting ready to play the bass. And I'm like, okay, let's go ahead. Maybe I got my upright, see, I got my claw. So I know what I'm talking about in case somebody think I'm making stuff up. I actually know what I'm talking about. So you develop this over time. You can't just have this without actually playing, right? But nevertheless, maybe I got that, or maybe I got my electric bass, whatever, I'm getting ready to play. And I'm sitting up there, and there's been whole 2-3 hour fights before a rehearsal starts because somebody doesn't know if we're going to do this or we're going to do this. And if you don't know, I just basically, it's either going to be the first measure with the second measure, or the second measure first, or flip it, where this is the first measure, and then put the other one on the back. And believe it or not, that's a fight, because whoever's going to dance to it, or sing to it, or somebody else is going to play to it, like, we can mess up everything, and people are fighting for every little thing. People don't believe it, but they're fighting for their culture, right? They're fighting for their culture. You said it sounds exactly, or in Jamaica yearly lasts, or weeks. Mm-hmm. Even capoeira, definitely similar as far as clave for sure, right? But yeah, or as far, okay, I see what you're saying as far as the moving and the dancing and all that, and a lot of I've never actually learned capoeira, but I know some of the basics of it or whatever, right? But yeah, like some of that, right? Like, that's very true. Yeah, that's capoeira. If you're not, I'm about to say something that doesn't. If some of you know music enough to know that I'm trying my best to, like, just give an example here. So don't lambast me and be like, he don't know what he's talking about. Y'all know what I mean when I say this, right? The average person doesn't know what I'm talking about when I say this. If you want, like, capoeira and samba, or go hand in hand, if you want to kind of study what somebody's doing, as far as listen to samba and then go and watch somebody do capoeira, and you'll see the similarity. I know somebody on here, no, capoeira is more like, I get it, right? I've studied that. I'm just trying to say, if you, somebody who doesn't even know the depth of it, what we're talking about, I'm just trying to give you a reference point, right? But long story short, right? I know they're not the same dance. I'm talking about the clave and the similarity. Okay, let's make that very clear. I know they're not the same dance. Matter of fact, we know that capoeira was never really supposed to be a dance at first. They took a dance, they took a fighting style and made sure they hit it in a dance. I know the story, right? But I'm trying to say y'all to say this is your culture popping up. Oh, thank you, Sister Shima. Appreciate you. This is your culture showing up. This is your culture. This is your people showing up. This is your nation. Remember, we talked about that earlier. The person was talking about people. People means nation. Your nation's supposed to have culture, and they're fighting for it. And what's happened is somebody else took over, and they said, if we don't say it is what it is, then it's not there. So they write it, but they can't feel it. And we have this problem to where you feel things that others can't write. Now, should we write our stuff out? For sure, for certain. But what I'm saying is that don't allow people who can't feel what you feel start writing to making what they write more important than what you feel. And that's what's happened is we've lost some of ourselves. We've lost some of ourselves. Right? We've lost some of ourselves because we've allowed other people to dictate to us what we feel. This is where you get facts over feelings. That's very Western. Is it not? We might have to do part 2 of this tomorrow. Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll let the Holy Spirit do what she does. Right? How you doing, Habaya for life? Yeah, the dance fighting capoeira. Yeah, like what's his name? If you ever played Street Fighter back in the day, if you're still not catching what I'm talking about, if you ever played Street Fighter back in the day, a modern version of it, even though it's not, you can't tell what the dance is. A modern version of a cartoon, I guess, is if you ever watched Bob's Burger. I don't remember if it was like in the first season, second season, maybe even the third, but I feel like it was early in their episodes where Bob ends up Tina, the daughter, the one with the glasses or whatever. She ends up going to. Yes, I used to watch Bob Burger. I don't watch it anymore, but yes, I watched enough of it to get the concept down. and Tina, because I know there's a lot of wild stuff in the show. I get it. Tina is going to this place to learn, and she's infatuated with this guy. She's always got crushes on guys and stuff, anyways. Sexually, very crazy stuff. But she goes to this guy, and he teaches capoeira or whatever, and she's trying to get her. She's getting ready to do her belt ceremony. Her dad comes and he gets jacked up by the guy. If you remember that episode, Tina goes on Bob's Burger and Bob gets jacked up by the by the capoeira guy or whatever. That's he keeps saying like chop chop, that's it. And he's of course white, which they're making a point with that too. Whitewashed, black and mentor, stuff like that. There's because Brazilian black people are very rarely shown on television, right? So yeah, Bob's Burger. So that's one. If you've seen that, that's even though you can't really see what's going on because the animation style is really elementary, you can't that's what they're trying to show. But if you go back in the day, if you go back some, or even if you don't go back in the day, because they probably got it on modern versions too. I don't get to play the game as much as I used to and get on those sticks like I used to, but DJ. And they got one in I don't know the name of the guy off the top of my head because I didn't play it as much. But what was the cat like the Tekken? Tekken has a version of it too. Yeah, thank you, St. Andrew. Tekken has a version of it too. But and in matter of fact, in the Wu-Tang fighting game, or was it the Wu-Tang? Yeah, Wu-Tang had a game by itself too, and then they had the not the Rough Riders game. What was that? The was it the Def Jam fighting game or whatever it was? And they had some people. One of them did it in there too. But if you go back to Street Fighter, DJ is like a lot of us were introduced to it. It was and they were honest. It was a black guy with braids. Yeah, Brazilian wore green and yellow, I believe, and or was he Jamaican? I hope they. Now that I think about it, they might have made him Jamaican. I think he was supposed to be Brazilian. He was Brazilian in the game. Yeah, I remember they had you fly. I know. What's this? See, now I'm about to call him Baraka. Baraka's Mortal Kombat. Blanca, which by the way is talking about white person, but the white person was green and he was made to be a monster. They're telling you a story about Black Your Mentor. Like people don't want to be honest about this stuff, right? But nevertheless, you have Blanca, And then you had DJ, and DJ was the Brazilian guy who was into capoeira, right? But that was something that we had as a group, and to defend ourselves, we kept up our martial arts, but we disguised it as a dance. So, so that's so you have a lot of different stuff. Like Japanese people be telling you the truth, because sometimes Japanese people, because they're taught from the West as well, so they don't like, or Chinese people, or a lot of people for that matter, they don't like us either, even though they're closer related to us than they are to anybody else. Yep, you sport warlocks. You did speak some patois for sure. It was very whitewashed patois, but it was patois nonetheless. I don't even know if we say that word correctly, so forgive me. Right, somebody who has Jamaican in their family, I don't do that well at all. But nevertheless, right, they it was raised by some Haitian people too, as far as my babysitters and stuff. But hey, it is what it is. I'll get it together one day. I really want to learn. We have some people here that speak it very well, and I'm going to learn at least the basics of it. But anyways, I say all that to say, you got to realize somebody can't see. There's certain things, like as a jelly criat. So if I go to West Africa, my nation, Shwe Nation, has designated me, and other nations as well. Nigerians have, Israelites have, people from the Bread Coast, the Slave Coast, the Gold Coast as well, have designated me as a jelly criat. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a French word. You can be called a jelly, you can be called a criat, you can be called a jelly criat. Um, but either way, and I know that's not how they would pronounce it en français. I'm just saying that's how we pronounce it. And basically, it comes across. It basically means that you are a historian. They say if a jelly, if you're worth what you're supposed to be, when you pass away, they say it's a sad moment. It's like a library being burned to the ground, right? So we take it very seriously, this position, and it's not, you don't just take it up. You don't just go to school and then get hired as a jelly, like somebody in your community, an elder, and then others have to co-sign it, but you get chosen for this, right? Many are called, few are chosen. Like, you got to be chosen by the community for this, right? And in our culture, it's our responsibility to not just teach our history, or our story, not his story, but our story. It's not our responsibility to only speak of it from a position of um, what's written only. We're supposed to be able to tell you through music, through art, through spoken word, right, word of mouth, through what's written, and other, ways, various ways. We're supposed to upkeep the story of our people, no matter what, at all times. And so what happens in the West is the West only says what's written, and the West only writes out what they feel is valid, and the West will write out other things, but they'll hide the other things that are there. So what you feel is what they're supposed to write, right? You're supposed to, like, I'm sorry, what you feel is what they write, supposedly, but they can't feel what you write. I'm sorry, I'm getting that mixed up. Let me slow down. What you feel, I think I said it right anyways, but I got to say it differently because it comes off weird to some, right? I get it. So you feel it, and you do. They see you and they study you. They try to write down what they see, right? But this is when appropriation is key. If something is appropriate, what's the definition of appropriate? Appropriate means somebody has said that it's all right to do. It also means, though, that somebody has to take from somebody else without permission, right? So if somebody has to take from somebody else without permission, right? That's when it becomes appropriate. And they usually do it for what? For money, for financial gain. You don't just do it randomly. You do it for financial gain, right? So you have a lot of people that when you use the word appropriate, people don't even know what the word means. Once again, here comes etymology. Here comes basic stuff, right? Some basic stuff as far as etymology, some basic stuff as far as thought process, some basic stuff as far as like what people should be doing, using, how you should use it, etc. Right? So you have a lot of people who will say that something is appropriate, and you got to realize you never want to be appropriate, because it means I have to be accepted by taking somebody else's stuff and using it without their permission, and oftentimes doing it for profit. And that's when it becomes capitalism. When something that is appropriate has been now turned into profit, that's when we start getting into a system called capitalism. So our responsibility as Jelly Griot, as what you might even call in other cultures a historian, and our story, our responsibility is to make sure that we keep things correct, and that if others take it, we have to tell you, hey, look, they took that. I know they shifted. I know they changed it. I know they wrote it this way, but they might even meant well when they did it, but they couldn't feel what we felt. You see the difference? Some of you are going through relationship issues right now, not just husband and wife, but just friends, family, whatever, because you're not realizing that you don't need to make sure what's written down. What's written down, the person's writing down only what they can get out of it, but you're not seeing that they can't feel what you feel. See, I can try my best to tell somebody something, and if you're not in the culture, you're not going to feel it. Right? There's somebody out there. There's a whole bunch of you guys that can make spaghetti tonight. That's not a big deal, right? But there's some of you out there, right, that if you were to try to make spaghetti, you couldn't make it like an Italian grandmama would. Why? Because she feels some things when she makes the spaghetti. I don't comprehend the. I'm sorry. What would we do tomorrow? Is in what context? Sorry. Right. See, there's some things that you can't do. There's some things that you could talk all day about trying to. You could talk about. Oh, are we supposed? What time is check? Oh no, we're fine. I think we're supposed to be out. I think they're supposed to be out. Okay. Yeah. So there's even some stuff like as far as what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. Like let's say for example, you look at a dance. There's some dances that you gotta feel. You can get all the steps down and still people be like, matter of fact, there's some people that could do on paper, they could dance better than somebody else, but you still don't feel it. It's like I've talked about in music. I can sit down behind the organ and I can have somebody who's, a world-renowned singer, or maybe not world-renowned. Let's say like this. Maybe you can have somebody who has the skills to be world-renowned. They start singing and they hitting every note, they hitting all the runs, they're doing stuff that you like, man, this is it. But you start realizing like there's no reaction to it because you don't feel it. But here comes somebody who can't even sing, right? But they feel it. And somehow, some way we can take that and get everybody uplifted, right? You feel it. That's why I try to tell everybody when they hit you with the facts over feelings, you better make sure that feelings are factual. How somebody feels is a fact, right? See, for us, when somebody says facts over feelings, see, we already know that's meant. See, in our culture, see, I feel it. A lot of times that's what we have to tell. We have to remind our people is the reverse. See, their people, they're like, okay, they study it and then maybe they'll try to feel it, right? For us, in our culture, we actually feel it first, and then somebody has to remind us, hey, study that thing. Like you get so much into it, you start listening. You're like, "Ooh, I can listen to this all day. I can sing this all day. I can shout this all day." And somebody has to remind you, "Hey, in the midst of all your shouting, don't forget, pick up the Bible. Don't forget, like, look up the language. Don't forget, like, see if what this person is saying actually makes sense." Right? There's a lot of people who will say all this stuff, but they're not making sense. Why? Because they only feel it. See, we have to be careful. How you doing, Kente? We have to be careful on the flip. See, a lot of people, when you're talking about this stuff, a lot of people, they study it until they can feel it. For us, we feel it, and then we feel it, but we can't forget. Go back and study it. That's why I tell y'all, even if it's me or anybody who you're talking to, I don't care who it is around the world, like, if you feeling it, that's one thing, but you better study it to make sure. Right? You feeling it, that's one thing. That's great, you feeling it, but I'm telling you, you better study that thing. Right? We're gonna reverse. For them, for the West, they say study it, and then maybe you'll feel it. Right? Some of you have seen this example online. It's an example that preachers have been using for generations, by the way. So this is not a new thing, but a lot of people are picking up on this because you're seeing it floating around online, where the guy says, "Hey, look, you can tell there's a difference. There's no shade." He said there's still our brothers and sisters, but he said you can tell the difference between a white brother and a black brother, a white sister and a white sister, real easy. And people didn't want to hear that. Right? People didn't want to hear that because there's differences in culture and how you were raised, right? He said, but I can show you really easy. What does he do? He says, watch this. I'm going to show you really easy by just singing a song. We're going to sing a real easy hymn. He said, everybody in the church right now knows this hymn. He says, there's not even something that's going to be hard for y'all. He said, everybody in here, no matter what the color of your skin is, you know the hymn, right? He said, so watch this. You're going to be, he says, before we start, he says that Everybody who is of one culture knows that you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. You even know that your foot stomps on 1 and 3, and your foot claps on 2 and 4, right? He said there's going to be another culture where you come from 1, 2, 3. The inference is always on 1, 2, 3, 4. It's always on 1, 2. You call it the downbeat. We know where the downbeat is, but we don't dance according to the downbeat. We dance on the offbeat. It's called syncopation if you do it fast enough, or if you start getting into 16th notes, things like that, you talk about a syncopated rhythm. You're not even talking about the same type of rhythm. So if you syncopate a rhythm, if you're doing a syncopated rhythm, that means I'm not focusing on certain things. I'm focusing not on the downbeat, I'm focusing on the offbeat. This is why even in like Could You Be Loved? Back to Bob Marley real quick. Do 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 do. That's not the beat. The beat is but what are you dancing to? You're dancing to right? You're not dancing to the same thing, right? It's cultural. You could why? Because you've been raised in it. You know you're not supposed to dance. If the beat is going do, you're not trying to go. You're not clapping like that, right? You know that you're supposed to go but you already know intrinsically something in you steps up, right, and says we're not supposed to do that because you've been raised in a culture that says different. You already know, right? Could you be loved? Could could you be loved? So my voice is non-existent there. And be loved, right? Like do 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 do. And even the beep up not even on the beat. But that's what you're dancing to. And even with the could you be loved, not even on the beat. And being loved, and then it comes back on, right? It's syncopated, it's off. Right? And if you're in the culture, even if you're not Jamaican, so to speak, even though you could be by blood and not know it, right? But even if you're not Jamaican, so to speak, you still know where you're supposed to come, or the beat, right? Where you're supposed to come in on, where you're supposed to dance. You know it's not on the downbeat. You know where the downbeat is. The downbeat is just in your culture. It is an indication that the music starts here and that the phrasing starts here and it ends here, so I can get ready to go to the next phrase. But I know that's not what I'm dancing to. That's not what ultimately is moving me. That might be what I know is where we start and where I need to recognize the phrasing, but I have the rhythm of it because I have the culture of it. Right? Syncopation happens in many different types of music. I'm just using that as something that we would know. Syncopation happens in classical music. It just sounds different, right? But in classical music, usually, when they usually say classical, they usually mean white classical, because why are classics only European hits? So there's many different. Matter of fact, Beethoven was not what you would call white either, right? But when you're dealing with this stuff, so syncopation is when you're dealing with what? Off the beat, right? So the downbeat. Nowadays, a lot of people, especially too, because a lot of people are heavy in bass. So what do you do when the music's heavy on the bass? What do you do? Boom, 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 right? So a lot of people don't know about syncopation. But you go back to some music where you people come from. What do you go? Once again, dip, 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 but dip, 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 like it's off. It's the offbeat, and you go, oh, okay, like that's what you feel, and you feel in the offbeat more than you feel in the on. But you listen to something, so go back to that same thing. Now go to your hymns, right? Those of you who were raised with hymns, the red hymnal, whatever you were raised with, and all that stuff, right? Let's say that you sing in a hymnal. The hymnal that you can just choose the easy one, right? The guy, going back to the example, he says, all right, let's sing. He said, we're going to sing, glory, glory, hallelujah. The since I laid my burdens down. And he said, and if you listen, as soon as he started singing it, you heard a whole huge amount of the audience going, glory, glory, hallelujah. And what were they doing? They were clapping on 2 and 4, the offbeats. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. That's what they were doing. Clapping on the offbeats, right? But he made it a point, and he was joking around. He wasn't being mean or anything. Like the way, if you go read it, you'll see the context of it, right? But he was making the point. He was like, if you look like around this, you see clap on. He said, you'll see that we're clapping on 2 and 4. He said, but if you got some white friends, they'll be clapping like this All right. He was making a point to say culturally, they're focused on what? The downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. So for them, 1 is the most important where they come from. Right? Right. Right. Even if it's the smooth in the beginning, the bass in the beginning, the tubas and the stringed instruments and the cello. I'm sorry, the upright bass in the beginning. Like, and it's beautiful. Don't get it twisted. I love that song. It's beautiful. That's beautiful. Right? Even James Brown, when you say 1, see, once again, if you say James Brown on the 1, stuff like that, he's saying on the 1, but he's talking about 1. He's talking about a hit. Hit me on the 1. But you still syncopated, even with James Brown, right? Like it's still off. Right? You dancing to the beat, right? But the downbeat is the 1. So that's cool. The down, we start on the dot, but everything else is syncopated. So like it's a cultural thing. So when he say on the 1, he ain't saying focus on the downbeat. He's saying meet me at the 1, but we're gonna get it, we're gonna be off beat. Right? But we live off the beat. You see that? Somebody else lives on the beat. We live off the beat. Right? We get the sustenance for the dance and the nourishment. They're using these terms for a reason. You're getting the nourishment off of the beat. Off of the beat is where some of that stuff is. It's like you can read a scripture, but sometimes those in-between things that come from culture that you've been raised in, those are the things that you're really feeding off of. But if you don't know the culture, then how do you know the syncopation, the syncopated rhythm that you're supposed to live in? Right? How do you know the syncopation? Right? If you don't know the syncopation, you're gonna miss it. You're gonna miss it. You got to know the offbeat. You got to know the culture. You have to know what did Yahashua HaMashiach mean, right? When he said that, see, people who are Old Testament only or New Testament only, as if there's a such thing because somebody wrote it in. What did they mean? What did these people mean? You know, when Yahashua would say stuff like, I'm sorry. Yahweh Elohim Aleph Chaba Elohim at Lab at Nachevash at Ravak. Hold on. I just messed up. At strength or nevertheless, I said it pretty well. Or Yahweh Elohim is one Lord, and you must love him with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. And you must love your neighbor as you love yourself. On this are all the other laws upon. He literally quoted Deuteronomy 6:4. Then he quotes Exodus chapter 3. Exodus chapter 20, rather. And if you don't know Exodus chapter 20, that's where you get your 10 commandments from. But he put them in succession, and he made them even tighter than what they were. See, a lot of people think he went away from it. He made it tighter. What he says is this. He says, look, the first 4 commandments, love him with all the heart, the soul. And this is, by the way, I'm quoting the version that's in Mark chapter 12, verses 28 to 34. He says, love him with all the heart, the soul, the mind, and the strength. That's the first of all commandments. Right? Well, there's 4 commandments that deal with loving Yah, the first 4. But then he says what? The second like it is this. The second like it is what? The second in the same thing is what? To love your neighbor as you love yourself. Look at the next 6 commandments, 5 through 10. What do they declare? They declare, honor your mother and father. That's who? Your neighbor. Don't lie to who? Your neighbor. Don't steal from who? Your neighbor. Do not commit adultery with who? Your neighbor. Do not off or try to take the life of who? Your neighbor. And do not covet or want what who has? Your neighbor has. He literally puts them together and then says, on those fall all the other commandments, which means that the commandments didn't go away. He was saying that if you get those right, then you'll be able to have the other ones be pretty easy because you got it. Now, somebody who's not looking at that from the proper culture, you've missed it. You were so busy on the on beat that you're arguing the on beat. No, he just said there's 2 commandments. No, he never said that. Look at the offbeats. You see what I'm saying? But they don't feel it And a lot of times we don't feel it because we are looking for what somebody else wrote down. See, for them, if they can't put it in common time, 1, 2, 3, 4, then they can't go ahead and feel it. But the problem is that you're not a common sense person. You're a kingdom sense person. You're not on common time. You're on kingdom time. If I'm on kingdom time, then kingdom time look different than common time, doesn't it? Mm. You see? So somebody wants you on that 4/4 common time. If you don't know what common time is, whenever you see music, if you see a letter C at the beginning of it, it's common time, 4/4. If you see it with a C with a line in between it, it's cut time. That means they just want you to do it twice as fast, but it's technically still common time. They want you to move fast without even knowing culture. But if you know culture, you already know all this stuff. Before we talk about the key, before we talk about how many notes are in each bar, before we talk about how many measures are in the song, if I have enough culture, I can already tell you what the song is. Matter of fact, if I see when the song starts, does it start on the fourth beat, this and that? What is the time of it? Is it in 3/4? If it's in 3/4, and if it's moving a certain way, and I see the bass does this and all this, if I'm the person who's conducting, I'm looking at all this stuff before we even do it. When we're sight reading, when I'm looking at it for the first time, and if I see all this stuff, you know what I go? I go, ooh, this is a waltz. I already know this is gonna be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now I need the tempo. What does it say? Okay, it says adagio, it says allegro, it says andante. If it's andante, it's this type of style. It might be around tempo equals 80. Tempo equals 80. I know tempo equals 60 is about a second. So 1 locomotive, 2 locomotive, 3, something like that, right? That's a second, right? Like the national anthem. I don't play the national anthem or sing it or anything like that anymore. But the national anthem is 60, right? This is stuff that you're supposed to think in the culture. So if I see 680, my first response is to go, okay, 60. 60 is. So in my mind, I go, da, 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 da. That's actually supposed to be the tempo. Da, 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 boom, crash, da, da, da. Right? So I think that in my head. I go, okay, 60. That's a second. So each beat is worth a second. But then it says here, it's andante. And so that's the style. But I also know the tempo is probably like around 80. So let me see, 80. If I go to 80, so 60 is here. Speed it up a little bit. Okay. All right, we're here at 80. And now I'm ready to go. So it's a waltz. 1, 2, 3. And I even imagine as we're doing it, in my mind, I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, 1, right? I'm moving already. So when I'm conducting, right, I'm in a different place. I'm not just looking at what's written. I feel it. And matter of fact, even Beethoven, he told somebody, one of at least I don't know if it's his most famous quote is my favorite quote of his, where he's asked a question about how many making mistakes and stuff. He says it doesn't matter. He says it doesn't matter about making mistakes. He says the sin is not in how many mistakes you make. He says the sin is in playing it without feel. How you doing, Coco? He said that's the sin. He said if you want to talk about missing the mark in music, he said you're missing the mark in music. It's not about all this other stuff. It's about playing the music and not feeling what you playing. When I got that, I started coming out of my perfectionist mindset so much and started realizing it's all right to make mistakes. Most people don't even know, by the way, because they don't know the culture. I could play a song, classical, doesn't matter if it's classical, doesn't matter if it's R&B, doesn't matter whatever it is. I could play a song for you, and most people wouldn't even know what it is. Most people wouldn't even know what I'm talking about, or they wouldn't even know if I made a mistake on it, rather, because you don't play what I play. And you got to know that in your culture, you got people that are trying to tell you that they don't even know what mistakes are like because they can't feel it. He's not the first composer to add feeling, by the way. He's once again, if you look at classical music, it's only their classics. But remember, what we call classical music existed before Haydn, before Bach, before Beethoven, before Mozart, before any of them, right? This stuff was being played in West Africa and then in Spanish, in Spain, before it was known as Spain, and universities and stuff like that. So, but once again, we got to realize that a lot of people, because they can't write, they can't feel it, they have to write it. And then they write it and they say the only way that it's acceptable is if you follow what we wrote. But what if we feel things that you can't write? So see, it's on me as the person who can feel it, and you might not be able to write it. Let me write out what we feel. And I'll try to figure out how to give it to you in a way that you can at least comprehend. See, that's what a parable is I'm going to use something that fits in culture with you to show you what we really feel, how we really move. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna try to show you how we really feel and how we move. You can't have a tongue where you just say, when I move, you move just like that, and everybody pick up on it. When some people don't know how to move like you move. Who do I worship? I worship Yahweh Elohim, and there is none other Elohim beside him. He is Aleph Bet, therefore he would be one with Yahashivai, and we know that he is Elohim, therefore he would be Yahweh at Yahashivai at Ravach HaKodash, at Sham Abba, at Sham Bar, at Sham Ravach HaKodash. 3 in 1, because Elohim literally means the Father. If you look up the characters, when you write it out, it is the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit that lead us in the water, the blood, and the Spirit. 3 in 1 must lead 3 in 1. Right? Any other version of that is not worthy of my worship, because it is something that's beneath him, and therefore is beneath anybody who belongs to the kingdom. But that's culture. Once again, people will write it out to try and make it make sense to them, but not what we feel. No, because Jesus, if you look up, first, like even this Bible right here, you see this Bible right here, it's the King James Version, the 1611 King James Version. If you look in this is an original version. So, not originally made, because first of all, it's a version anyways, right? It's not in the original language. It's not in Latin. It's not in Greek, and it's definitely not in Ofori, which is Paleo Hebrew. That being said, though, in that version, even in English, it's written in Middle English. So it reads different than modern English, even the King James Version that a lot of people use. In that, you will not even see the letter J. In this, they're honest. Matter of fact, I'll show you. Give me a second. I'm going to have to mirror the screen, and then give me a second to turn to it. But I'll show you. I've shown it before on these live sessions, if we ever recorded on here, but I'll show it to you. Right, so once again, just so you see, I'm not making anything up. 1611 King James Version. All right, you see publisher's preface, all that stuff. If you need to see that, if you need to see all that, take a screenshot if you can. I'm just running through it. Right, got the same bibliographical introductions, all those things there. Right, I know on Facebook I'm backwards. Forgive me. How you doing, Bradley? Right, even explains the Bible 1611. By the way, this Bible wasn't even allowed to be used. The King James Version comes from this. That wasn't even allowed to be used in the 1700s because there was a lot of truth that came out of it. Even though King James himself, although he was an African, by the way, King James himself, and probably an Israelite, but King James himself didn't even follow the word. He just wanted it to be honest. He wanted an honest description of what the word said and how it could be translated to English. Right? But you'll see certain things in this, right? So I'm going to go to the book of Matthew, which really for us would be the interpretation of Yahashua Mashiach according to Mattatayach, but or even in English, it's supposed to be the gospel of Jesus Christ according to Matthew, and Mark is supposed to be known as the gospel of Jesus Christ according to Mark, even in the terms that you use, right? But we'll just go here. We won't go deep into that right now today. But I just want to show you some stuff. Once again, people haven't been honest with this. So this is why it's difficult to have this part of the conversation. But that's why we got to, once again, a lot of Western stuff has been taught to make sure they hide certain things. They take credit for the stuff that they want you to believe is true. And then when you bring out a fallacy, then they have to start disassociating either you or themselves from the truth as much as possible, because truth separates. But I'm going to just show you this real quick. This is a simple one. In this whole Bible that I have, there is no such thing as the letter J. By the way, there's a lot of U's that have the V sound, because a lot of y'all think that ooh is real. And that's why you say like Yeshua instead of Yahashivai and stuff like that. Not realizing that it's not, ooh is not a Hebrew, pronunciation, especially Paleo Hebrew or Phoenician phonetic Aleph Bet or Aleph Bait. It's not our culture, right? So a lot of places where the letter U is, like under, is never spelled U-N-D-E-R. It's always spelled V-N-D-E-R, a lot of stuff like that, because that's not how we pronounce words, right? But anyways, this is in English, by the way. So once again, this is in English, and I'm going to show you on Facebook, and I'll show you on YouTube, and then I'll show you on TikTok. I want to show you Matthew chapter 1, right? Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, and then we'll even go to Matthew chapter 1, verse 11, so you can see even Josias and Jeconias, which really should be pronounced differently, because you won't see a letter J. You'll see I-E or I-O, because they don't have a J sound, right? They don't have a J sound in there. So you see I-E or I-O, because they don't have a J sound, and it doesn't make a J when it's in that. You have I-E or I-O, it makes a Ya sound. Because if my people who are called by my name right? And what is his name? Yahweh, or short, even this Yah. All right, Yasaya Yah, or Isaiah, Hananiah, Azariah, Ananiah, instead of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Right? These are Yah sounds, or even Al, which is the title, Al or El, Daniel or Danaal, right? Danaal, actually, excuse me, in Paleo Hebrew. Excuse me. So see, we're having a cultural difference. But nevertheless, let me just show you in here that you're not going to see this letter J. There is no letter J. All right? So let's just go through this, that there is no letter J. You ready? So this is chapter 1. I'm going to show you chapter 1 and then verse 11. You won't see. Now, in your Bible, if you want to open the King James or any other version, you're going to see the letter J. Right? How you doing, fair use? But you're not going to see it in here. Right? This precedes it. So how, even in English, they used to say, oh, yeah, we know that that's not real. And they're going to show you what's happening. Now you got to know the rest of the culture. We're going to help you fill in the gaps, and then we'll take our leave because I got to get ready to get on the road. Right? But they're going to tell you straight up in here, we don't read. We don't use that. Okay? You ready? Watch this. And even the whole King James, it wasn't called King James, by the way, because somebody would be like, well, where did the letter J for King James come from? That's what you call it now. There was no such name as James back then. Right? So even with that, when people say, well, I tried to research King James, because there's no such word as James back then. Okay, but let's just watch. Let's just watch. You ready? So here you go. Here's where the name, supposedly the name Jesus is supposed to be, right? Sorry, on Facebook. You see that? It has an I there, right? And if you look over verse 11, you're supposed to see two letters, two names that have the letter J there, but they have an I there. Right? YouTube, you see it? I'm coming over your TikTok in a second. You see it? Right? Matthew chapter 1, verse 11. It doesn't say J there, does it? It has an I. And if you look up at verse 11 and read, you'll see two names, Josias and Jeconias, except the problem is it doesn't have a J, it has an I, right? Because it makes a Yah sound. All right, TikTok, here we go. Matthew chapter 1, verse 11. This is right. This is Middle English. This is the English that you're supposed to be getting, right? Does it say Jesus there? It doesn't. It has an I there, not a J. Verse 11. You see two names there. It's supposed to be Josias and was it Jeconias? You don't see any of that there, do you? Thank you. 11:11. It's 11:11, babe, on the East Coast, right? So you can be careful if you're going to order it online, because they'll say they're the original King James version, but if you get one that has the letter J in it, it's not original. That's one of the telltale. What is it? Tall signs, whatever. Right? But you got to look for, take a screenshot if you want. Look for these ISBNs. That's the best way. Look for these ISBNs, okay? Those are the ones that you're looking for. Find those ISBNs. Telltale signs? Wow. Yeah, I had that not right at all. Okay. But telltale signs. Okay. Praise y'all. All right. But yeah, so what we're looking for is that. But what's the reason I say that is because that this word is not there for Jesus or Jesus even, or Jesus, but this is Jesus. Now, there is no yeh sound in the Hebrew alphabet, so we already got the problem, right? We don't have a yeh sound, which means that it can't be what we called him or what he called himself, right? I forget what the term ISBN uses. I know from my books I usually get an ISBN and then sell it myself, but I'll make sure I get an ISBN first, like through Amazon, but I won't sell them through Amazon. I'll make sure I sell them myself. It's basically just another way of making sure that your book is recognized, and if somebody tries to take it or steal it or whatever, at least that's how I use it. I don't even know officially if that's the way you're supposed to use it. That's how I use it. So, but I don't know what it actually stands for or not. It's kind of like copywriting without copywriting. That's how I use it. I don't know if that's how we're supposed to let it function. That's just how I use it. But anyways, right? So now if we know that the term is Jesus, see, because once again, here's another thing that they're dishonest about. How do you pronounce? This is going to sound stupid. I know, but just humor me if you don't mind. It's the foolish things of this world that confound the wise. And then it's got to be the last thing we got to get ready to take our leave, right? How do you pronounce Joshua? And it sounds stupid, but just just roll me just for a second. How do you pronounce Joshua? How do you pronounce the name Joshua? You would pronounce the name Joshua by saying Joshua, right? Okay. Now peep game, right? It sounds stupid, but just roll with me, right? So now that we did that, how do I pronounce Joshua? I pronounce it Joshua, or some people say Yeshua, right, which is closer, right? But how do I pronounce Joshua? I pronounce Joshua in English. Let's do it like this, or in modern English. How do you? Because we just saw in English they don't really do that either. But let's just say in modern English, how do I pronounce Joshua? I pronounce Joshua by pronouncing Joshua, right? Now, really, his name would be different, but let's just go with English, right? I know people can do different dialects. That's why I'm trying to just focus on what we do today, right? Now, how do I pronounce Yehoshaphat, or who you call Yeshua, Yahushua, Yahweh, etc.? How do I pronounce that? How do I pronounce that? For some reason, I pronounce Yeshua, or Yehoshaphat, or Yahweh, etc. But the problem is though, is that the Messiah's name is supposed to be the same as Joshua's name. Did you know that? Because not only is the Messiah known as the second Adam, that means that you had the first Adam and then you had the second Adam that's created, whatever, right? It also means that you have two Joshuas. There's the first Joshua who came after Moses and takes us into Canaan, and there's a second Joshua who takes us as far as Moses can take us, not because Moses was wrong as far as giving us the law, because remember, the law is what we were supposed to take into the land of Canaan. I remember, right? Was Joshua supposed to stop using the law once he went into the land of Canaan? Or was Moses just not able to take him into the land of Canaan because Moses was disobedient? Moses' disobedience caused him to get up to Canaan, and he still got into heaven, but he could not go into the promised land, at least not the physical one. He had to go into the spiritual one, right? Right? Like David could build the temple, or David could get the materials together for the temple, but he was not allowed to build the temple, right? See, so we get the context from that. Here comes the second Joshua, but you call him Jesus. Why don't you call him Joshua? Doesn't something seem a little weird? That this person is supposed to take you into this new land flowing with milk and honey, somehow, some way, isn't named after who he's supposed to be. You don't mind him being called the second Adam, but nobody ever calls him the second Joshua. He had the same name as Joshua for a reason. It was something showing you prophetically what was going to happen when he came down. How you doing, Nicola? Is that's weird, right? And your Bible doesn't reflect it. Now, if you look in your Bible's concordance, you'll find that they have the same name. But if you just read it without any knowledge of it, without, once again, you're going off what somebody else wrote down and not what's supposed to be felt, then you're reading something completely different. You don't even have the same context. You don't even have the same culture. You don't even have the same mindset. Right? So, and why is that important? Because then we got to figure out, well, then why do they use the term Jesus? And they'll try to hit you with it's a transliteration. Problem is, though, is that if I spell out Yahashafai, then Yah gives me a jet sound, kind of, sort of. If you want to equate that, there's no letter J back then, but all right. If that's what we do, okay, kind of, sort of, we can do that. But you have Yah, which is where you get the just sound, maybe, right? Then you're supposed to say Jashu, but we don't, but next is supposed to be, it's supposed to be Yah, because there's a He there, which means that before you say Joshua, it should be Jahashua. But they're not, we already have something now. But then maybe you say, well, maybe it's just because they can't pronounce it because they don't pronounce H's. There's a lot of words they don't pronounce their H's on. That's why some of you say Alleluia and not Hallelujah. Okay. All right. If that's what we're doing, no problem. Right? If that's what we're doing, no problem. So then we get all those things and we get all these things and we figuring that stuff out and we're getting it together and we see that we have that maybe you had that sound, but then here's a question. Then you have the oo sound, but we don't have a oo sound. We have a vav. And then we don't have a ah at the end. There's another character that's supposed to be there. It's called ayin. So if it's transliteration, it's really poor. They just took words out. Amen, Minister Nice. They took character out. They took meaning out. Once again, we don't spell out words. Every character matters. We're missing 2 characters. There are technically 3 because they just replaced one, but that's why transliteration is always dangerous. You're going away from the original. So if it was Joshua, then he should be Joshua the Christ. If he's Yehoshua, then he should be Yehoshua who came after Moses. But they don't do that, do they? They're lying. Somebody's messing up. Right? Yehoshua, and then even salvation is Yehoshua. So you got to even put an extra Yah in there, right? Like, but we're missing, and it's because we're supposed to be so in tune with the culture. We feel what they're trying to write. Like I was just saying, right? Well, yeah, they did on purpose. Some did on purpose to be confused. But once again, once you confuse the first generation, they don't even know they're confused. Not the first generation. How about the first generation to be born out of the first, right? Just like Willie Lynch said. Willie Lynch said, our goal is not to mess up the people who be enslaved. Our goal is to mess up the people that come out. We're going to focus on mama and everybody that comes out of mama's womb. He said, if we mess up everybody that comes out of mama's womb, the rest is easy. He said, therefore, we can take the body. We can keep the body, but take the mind. He said, that's the goal, is to keep the body, take the mind and throw it somewhere. Matter of fact, keep the body, take the mind, store it somewhere. This is why when you guys talk about the Roman Catholics and how come they have this in their building and how come they have this belief and all this stuff or whatever, it's easy to be able to see why they have it. It's easy to be able to see for, if no other reason than this. They kept your body, right? But they took your mind and they threw it somewhere. They have it in the vault. They have you believe in all this stuff that you shouldn't believe in. They have you worshiping all the stuff you shouldn't worship. And by the way, Jesus is, by the way, here's something for you as we get ready to take our leave. I'm not really going to do a shout out. Like I said, we got to get on the road. So I'm going to get ready to take my leave from you. I apologize. I got to mirror my image again. Sorry. Hold on one second, y'all. Okay. So if you want to reach out to us today, we won't do our shout out. If you want to reach out to us, if you want information on different things we do, outside of just going, if you're on TikTok, you can just go to our main TikTok page, click on the link tree, and find everything that you need to find there, as far as classes, as far as homeschooling stuff, as far as life coaching, marital coaching. If you want questions, if you'd like to be able to figure out how to partner with us or join membership or see different things that we do, all these different things, right? Or you can just take a screenshot of us on your screen now. If you're on YouTube or Facebook or even on the podcast coming over from there, you can always just look in the description with each video or each podcast, and you'll be able to find the information to contact us back, right? But long story short, last thing, when people say we don't know what Jesus means or Jesus means, it's just a transliteration. It's a trick of the enemy. It's very tricky, but it's not that difficult. Demastasus means the daughter of Zeus. Pegasus means the horse of Zeus. Zeus means Zeus. Well, then why does Jesus mean something different than Zeus? I'm gonna say it again. It's not that hard for us to be able to show that this is baloney, if you will. And we don't eat pork, so this is stuff that is trash to us. Right? You ready? Demastasus is the daughter of Zeus. Pegasus is the horse of Zeus. Zeus means Zeus. So therefore, Jesus has to mean something dealing with Zeus. What does the first part mean? The first part of the compound word is 2 words put together. The first word means man. So he's a demideus, or you guys call demigod, but they didn't have gods. Gods are Germanic. Deus and deities are Latin, Greek, and Roman. So when they started mixing the iron with clay, right, they started mixing man or their stuff together. Jesus, half man, half Zeus. By the way, who gave him this name? See, if we be honest, the name Jesus does show up in your Bible. even in the original version, if we be honest. But when does it, in the original Bible, when does it first make an appearance? Why would this name first make an appearance? Who would give him this name? It's actually not that difficult if you know the culture. There's two cultures showing up. I'll give you a hint. There's two cultures showing up at the cross. There's not just an Israelite culture showing up at the cross. There's another culture that shows up at the cross. What's that other culture? The enemy, but it's a little too obtuse. I want to be more acute. Okay, Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate. So what is Pontius Pilate's culture? What is he? See? You see? Roman. He's a Roman governor. He's also Gentile, right? Okay. So they believed in demigods or demideus. You call them demigods, they call them demideus. Half man, half whatever god had sex with a woman, right? Okay. And he believed that there was no fault in Yehoshua. He believed everything that he said and everything that was said about him. He had a dream about him. His wife had a dream about him. They believed that he was what he said. And everybody kept saying that he kept saying that his kingdom was not of this world. Right? In our culture, that does not mean that he would be related to Zeus. But in his culture, it's related to Zeus because he knows what that is. In his culture, what he knows, what he's intimate with, in his culture, if you are half man and half God or half deus or half deity, in his culture, it means what? It means that that you have to get with one of the deities, and then you have to have them come together with a woman, or possibly one of the men can get together with one of their women. That's the only way it can happen. And then you have a child, right? Like Heracles or Hercules, depending if you're talking about Greek or Roman, people like that, right? That's how you get these babies. Or even like the Little Mermaid, technically. They're making a statement. That's why I told y'all don't worry about the whole Black Little Mermaid stuff, this and that, who cares? Like, even if you look at that, they're making a statement. She's half girl, half fish. But also, if you look at it, right, in the Little Mermaid and all that, if you look at what's going on, her father is King Triton. King Triton is what? King Triton is actually Poseidon, right? If you look at King Triton is actually Poseidon, right? So if you look up King Triton, who is Poseidon, right? That's where you find it, right? King Triton is actually who? Poseidon. So King Triton is supposed to be the brother of Zeus and the brother of Hades. And then he has his daughter. It says his wife is gone, the one who would have given birth to her. And here's this girl who doesn't fit in. She's halfway in the fish world. She's halfway in the human world. And then eventually she goes through this thing and she wants to leave being in Olympus, so to speak. She wants to leave water and she wants to be able to live with somebody else who's on earth. You see the story? You see the culture? Right? So here's Pontius Pilate, who knows that this man has no fault in him, and he says his kingdom is not of this earth. So he calls him Jesus, half man, half Zeus. Okay, we're having problems now. All right, sorry about that. So you have this person who is half man, half Zeus. If he's going back to his kingdom, Olympus, then he must be half man, half Zeus. Therefore, he is Jesus. It's not actually that difficult to put two and two together. If once again, if Demasus is the daughter of Zeus, if Pegasus is the horse of Zeus, if Zeus means Zeus, then yes, Zeus, we know what time it is. Don't let somebody try to tell you it's just a transliteration. It's even if you want to call it that. Not all transliterations, by the way, just like not all translations can be done correctly because cultures are different and the way we spell out or write out or put character in the words are different. I'm just saying. So if you're going to talk about the Messiah and you're going to call him Jesus, you have to realize where does it come from. Nobody even studies these words to see what they mean. Like, people don't know how to spell out Yahweh or Yahashua or Yeshua or whatever. They don't even know how to use the characters. So how are we going to have an honest conversation about what his name means? A lot of you just go off of somebody told me my name means this, and maybe they're right, but maybe they're not. Have you ever looked up what the name means, how it's spelled, with each character? Like each character in your name. If somebody on here's name is Kevin, then the letter K is a character. It's a Greek alphabet. It's the Greek alphabet. You know that, right? You speak in English, but you write in Greek. That's why you write the alphabet. In order to know what Kevin means, you need to know what K, E, V, I, and N mean as well, or else you will never know what your name means. Because you're not supposed to just put spells together when putting words together. You're supposed to put character together. That's the culture that even the Greeks come from. Yeah, I mean, we always spell, and look, all of us do, but you're taught to spell. You're never taught to actually look up character. So you can have a name and swear, I know what my name is. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You know, a lot of people carry last names. Everybody's always carrying somebody's last name. Why you carry last name? They just started doing that. You don't have to be forgiven. You don't have to ask to be sorry. You don't have to be sorry about it, Matthew, or anything. We're all learning, right? It's a straw man mentality. We didn't. A lot of us didn't even know what that was until recently, either, right? That being said, though, for real, I'm about to get in trouble. We gotta get ready to get on the road, so we won't do a shout out today. I'll leave this up for you guys for just a couple. Well, I won't say a couple minutes, for about a minute or so, and then we'll get ready to take our leave. Um, People who are taking classes, please be patient with us. The classes are recorded. We just need to make sure that they get out to you guys, so you guys should get those recordings. Matter of fact, I'm gonna double check because some of them still might be uploading. If it takes too long, I might have to do it again, and maybe I'll even do it live for you guys. We didn't really have too much participation in trying to do the classes last night to make up for Tuesday, but you should be getting recorded. Mondays for Sovereignty One should be a recording anyways. And next week we're not supposed to meet for Sovereignty One, so I'll try and send an email out to everybody for these classes to make sure you guys know how they're working for the next couple of weeks. And I apologize for things being all over the place. It is what it is. Also, too, we got to get the stuff together as far as ordering these tents. If you're not going to be bringing your own tent, making sure we order these tents for you guys so they can be in place by September 29th. September 29th is right around the corner. Today is September 14th. So we be telling people for a long time it's going to be here before you know it. Also, too, those of you who would like to attend the Feast of Tabernacles virtually, we do need to have a $50 donation from you guys to help us with some of the stuff that we're going to be doing, even some of the extra stuff that you guys might get just because of you being on Zoom. You will not be able to sit through the whole thing. By the way, though, if somebody comes for the whole week for the Feast of Tabernacles, they've already given a donation of $450 plus getting the tent and the sleeping bag and stuff like that. So $50 donation for you guys to participate in something at least 1 to 2 times every day. Besides, the live sessions, other stuff that will still be going. We're not asking, 450 from 50. $400 difference, right? So we're just asking if you're able to help, and it helps us with other things too. People in diaspora need help and stuff like that, and families do. So we're just asking for you guys to help us as best you can. But we appreciate you. We thank you. We honor your time. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you. Keep each other in prayer. There are some families that do need help, so we'll be looking at raising some funds in a little bit. We're trying to take a little bit of a break from that because I know we've been asking you guys a lot, and we're still trying to finish up. Hopefully, when we get back over to Georgia before September 29th, we'll finally be able to have the last bit of paperwork done, and we'll start walking you guys on the I've taken some pictures actually showing you guys at the end of some of our shout outs, but the land that we're going to be on and stuff. But hopefully we'll be able to stand on there and do a live session or something, or at least put a video out there and let you guys know, yep, we got it. It's secure. Let's start getting it in. Then we can start working with other people who want to partner with us in the future for other land, which is fast approaching. It's wild because it's been taking for so long, and now we're sitting there saying it's going to be a 5-year, 10-year deal just for one thing to be acceptable enough for people to start considering to live on the land. And it looks like we might have to start thinking about doing land in multiple places and building at the same time, which is praise y'all for that. But I don't even know how to wrap my head around that right now. I'm just trying to let's finish purchasing and be faithful what the assignment is for now. So anyways, keep us in prayer for that. Keep us in prayer that the next few days I'm gonna be busy. We should be around, but I will be busy. So just keep us in prayer. We got wedding, which means that tomorrow's the wedding rehearsal and then wedding ceremony on Saturday. Brothers, we still are going to have the men's meeting, but the men's meeting is going to be led by Minister. Actually, I need to make sure I contact them, Minister Joseph and Minister Morel. They'll be leading it. So, brothers, please be in place. We will have the meeting. I will start it with you guys, but I will definitely probably not be able to finish because even once the wedding ceremony ends, we probably still have the wedding reception. So we'll show our support there. And then those who are going to be meeting up with us in Houston those will be meeting up. We're going to go to Houston for the wedding, but the meetup will be in Dallas. Those will be meeting up with us in Dallas on the 17th. If you want to meet up with us, no matter where you are, no matter where you're coming from, feel free to come over to Dallas and say hello to us. We'd love to be able to see you. And like I said, there's a slight possibility of somebody we need to see on our way back to Georgia coming through Alabama. We might make a stop there at some point after that. So if you want to keep your ear to the ground, so to speak, and let us just kind of be ready when we say, hey, we coming over this way, feel free to, if you're in the Alabama area, whatever, and you want to say hello. But that one's up in the air as far as I don't know. I don't even know when that would be. It's probably got to be even like in the middle of the week, which makes it a little difficult for some, I know. But it is what it is. So we're going to try to make that work if we can. But thank you guys. We honor your time. We appreciate you. I got to get ready to go. Sorry for not being on the last couple of days. Wednesday is usually my day off anyways. I was going to try and come on and make up for Tuesday, but my body wasn't quite ready Tuesday. Something happened, and we just had to get our health in order and make sure. So we got it pretty straight. Let me thank you guys for praying for us. We look forward to talking to you soon. Don't forget, tomorrow, too, is going to be Sister Judith on her channel doing the raw food diet stuff for us to show us how to eat raw foods and how to prepare. Okay. Thank you guys again. Appreciate you. I will talk to you guys later this evening if all goes well. We'll talk to you guys about 7:45 p.m. Eastern New York time. And until then, take care of yourselves. We give our honor and praise once again to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who does like to say able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we thank you guys so much. Take care of yourselves. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken, until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, Yahshua, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. Talk to you later. Peace.